Gohfuil muid arás le chéile in sa Shrumar Wine, cé go bhfuil se comhastruach seo. So, okay, members, it's great to see everybody here again, even if it is under these strange circumstances. And we know now it's very hot tonight, so I do feel like I'm in the hot seat, and I mean that literally. We're convening this meeting, Special Council, Monday the 19th of July at the Bonacre Centre here. And I'll now move on to the first item of the agenda, apologies. And I will go to the Sinn Féin party for any apologies.
Good morning, Carly. Anne-Marie Fitzgerald and Sean Donnelly.
Gurmagad. And now on to the Ulster Unionist Party.
Thanks very much, Chair. Councillor Victor Warrington and Councillor Chris Smith.
Gurmagad, thank you. And now on to the SDLP.
Thank you very much, Chair. Apologies this evening from Councillor Paul Blake and Councillor Garvin McPhillips. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Gurmagad. And now on to the Democratic Unionist Party.
Councillor Keith Harriott. He might be here and he might not.
Thank you. And now to any individual councillors or small parties. Yeah, sorry, yeah. So I do have an apology from Councillor Donnelly from the Alliance Party. And okay. I think that's it. So members, it is quite difficult to hear each other, so we just keep the noise down whenever we're in the middle of the meeting. I want to advise everyone to go on to decision time, as the presentation we're going to be receiving from Darren will be on decision time, so if everyone just has that open, it'll make it a lot easier when we're in the meeting. Clár Iver Ado. Now move on to the second item on the agenda, any declarations of interest. And so if you want to come in, you can just raise your hand to speak, and you can turn on your mic. You have to turn on your own mic as well. Okay, so, Councillor Irvine.
It's not a declaration for me, but I'm going to ask two members that are in the chamber how they can actually be in for the next item in regard to not declaring an interest, or maybe they're going to declare an interest and withdraw, and that's Councillor McAleer and Councillor O'Coffey. I believe that actually have perceived declarations of interest, whether they wish to declare it or not, and therefore they can't determine the next item. That's my opinion, and I want to put it on record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So any other declarations of interest, you can just raise your hand and turn on your mic. Okay.
Sorry, point of order, Chair. Can I ask the Chief Executive, of those present, who actually have availed of the appropriate training to allow them to actually go forward to the next item, item 3 on the agenda? We've all been informed that we have to have the appropriate training before we can actually determine this next item. The Planning Committee members had that training. I'm wondering which of the other members in the chamber not on the Planning Committee have availed, and if there are any that haven't availed of it, I'm asking the question, why are they still sitting here? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alison?
Okay, Chair, firstly, any member who has not, so there are 6 members in total who have been unable to avail of the training to date. Some of those have registered apologies. Some are in attendance, but it would be up to those members. Members may be in attendance, but may not. Our advice would certainly be that they should not participate in the decision-making related to this notification, but that ultimately will be a matter for the members in question.
Well, I'm going to ask the Chief Executive again. Thank you, Alison, for giving me that. I want those councillors named that haven't availed of the training, are still in the chamber, and at the moment haven't declared an interest.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to let Councillor McCann have his hand raised. I'm going to let him come in here.
Gormagat, Chair, thank you. I was one of the councillors who, due to other commitments, wasn't able to avail of the training, and I responded to Kim today to that effect. However, it's not a declaration of interest as such. I've got no intention of withdrawing from the chamber. I'm interested in the subject matter, and I'll be remaining throughout the debate. However, I'll be taking no part in any vote.
Gormagat, Collier. At this stage, I'll also say that I have not availed of that training, but however, I will not be taking a vote in the matter. As Chair, I'm just facilitating the discussion. William McGill, you can come in here now.
Thank you, Chair. I have participated in the training, and obviously my mandate has voted me in here to speak on issues such as that. We were at training, we were given advice that you can have a predisposition, but since we've been elected, we've taken an oath or a code of conduct, we've signed up to that. We're here to listen to the arguments for and against, and we make a decision on that. And I think it's actually disgraceful that one councillor is trying to hijack this meeting purely to exclude other members for it. On a secondary note, in relation to the training that I did attend, it was all very common sense training, and I don't think there is any reason whatsoever that those small number of councillors who didn't participate in that training shouldn't be allowed to vote and participate fully in this. There's quite an amount of documentation provided, and presumably the councillors have read the documentation. I presume there'll be some facility for asking questions and determining a response. The councillors across the chamber have all been elected to represent the people of their district, and unless they or their party has taken financial aid or received some sort of financial benefit or other kind of benefit from the exploration company or those involved, I would suggest there's no conflict of interest here. So I would just like that put on the record. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Gora Mogad. Collier McGilladove, Barry McElduff.
Thank you, Chair. Gora Mogad Carley. I think it was Councillor McCann outlined his position. You know, mine is the exact same. Haven't received the training, don't intend to take part in the debate or vote accordingly. So I think that reflects your own position, although you're facilitating the meeting as Chair. Thank you.
Gora Mogad. Collier Kelly. Councillor Van Letjen after again. Collier Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. I too have been unable to avail of the training due to work. So I will be taking a similar position to my colleague Stephen and Barry. Thank you.
And, yeah. Collier Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm in the same position due to work commitments, wasn't able to take part in the training, so I won't be taking part in any vote or debate today.
Okay, Carcolor Gora Mogad. Councillor Irvine, I'm going to let you come back in here now on this.
I wish to come back on a point of law, please.
Apologies.
One of the councillors actually has said that he was elected on a certain ticket and that he's predisposed to actually proceed with listening to and therefore determining or helping to determine the outcome of item 3. I would pose a question to Philip in regard to perceived and actual bias, and therefore is there a perception of bias here with regard to the stand already taken by that councillor, and therefore he shouldn't sit in to determine this application?
So you wish to seek legal advice from Philip?
Yeah, that's directly towards Philip. It's about perceived and actual bias. And when does perceived bias become actual bias?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As Councillor McAleer outlined earlier on, we did receive some training in relation to this last week from Mr. Gregory Jones QC, and I think Councillor McAleer has actually summarised the position very well, that there is a distinction to be drawn between a predisposition and a predetermination of the issue. A predetermination of this issue would be unlawful and leave the Council vulnerable to challenge, and therefore each member present must approach this matter with an open mind, must listen to the arguments for and against, and then must reach a decision based upon the understanding of the issues and of the papers that have been read, and must not let any predisposition that they may have in relation to the matter cloud their judgment in relation to the decision which they reach today.
Okay, thank you, Philip. We're going to bring in Councillor Swift, had her hand raised, I believe.
Yeah, Gora Mogad Cairlock, and just to say, as other councillors have stated as well, their position, I didn't avail of the second half of the training, but again, it's a common sense approach. I'm here to listen and hear the debate. And I would point out at this point as well, with all of the discussion about bias, perceived or otherwise, to be on the side of capitalism and imperialism, there's perceived bias also, so I would just like that point made. Gora Mogad.
Gora Mogad. Councillor O'Coffey, you were looking in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as in similar fashion to Councillor McAleer, I have been elected to represent the interests of working class people and have a well enunciated position in regard to environmental destructive activities and so on. However, as has also been stated by Councillor McAleer, we are elected on the basis of the Code of Conduct, and as such, I am here tonight with a mind to making a decision on the basis of the facts before me. I have no predeterminations at this stage, but I wish to find out more. I've certainly read the material, and I'll be making my decision on the basis of what I have before me and what I hear tonight. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, Cormac. Well, we've had the legal opinion from Philip, and all councillors have had an opportunity now to declare their interests as they see it. So I believe we can move on to the item. Oh, all right, Councillor Glenn Campbell, Collier.
Cormac, Chairman. Well, I do not wish to declare an interest, but I do want at this juncture, being a former member of the Legacy Omagh District Council, just state that I would have in the past met with people who were opposed to the mining operation at Cavanagh. However, I would have met primarily around roads issues, etc. But needless to say, I met with those involved in opposing it, but I approached this with an open mind, Chairman. I don't feel that it any way compromises my decision making tonight. So just to put that on record, Chairman.
Okay, Cormac. Well, as I said, members, everyone's had an opportunity now to declare their interests as they see fit. Again, it is up to individual members' discretion of their own accord. Oh, Councillor Bird.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Does anyone else have a difficulty hearing? You probably can hear me because I'm speaking very loudly into this, but I'm not sure what these earphones are for because they're not working. At least mine aren't. Is there any way of increasing the volume? I mean, the acoustics are terrible.
Yeah, we can have our audio team look at that. Can you hear me okay, members?
Just about.
Just about, okay. Well, I'll speak up.
But there's been conversation on it.
Collier O'Coffey.
Cormac. Chair, I think we were told that we had to log on to the WebEx system. I've been sitting here waiting to log on. And it
decision
says
time,
that the host
Councillor, sorry, decision time. So if you go on to, just normally we follow the agenda at decision time, the report from Darren will be available on it. Okay. So I'll just make sure that everyone heard for the last time that every member of the council has their own discretion to declare an interest in this matter or not. They've had an opportunity now to do that if they see fit. So as Vice Chairman, I'm happy enough to proceed on to the matter. As I said, members have had enough time to declare an interest. So if everyone's on decision time, Darren will be able to bring in the report and you can just read as you go along.
Okay, good evening, members. Just firstly confirm everybody can hear me okay. If you can't and you're having trouble to hear me, put your hand up, and I will speak louder. Or if there's anything you want to repeat, by all means put your hands up and give me a wave and I'll go back over something. In terms of the presentation, slightly different from the Planning Committee, the presentation's on decision time. So before I start, can I just confirm all the members can see that on their screens and have access to that? And yeah. So I'll just not start until everybody's got that on their screens, members. As a slightly different from the Planning Committee, and normally I would click on the button and you would see the next slide. In this case, members, you have control of the slides, so you can move backwards and forwards as you wish to. So I'll take you through the numbers and take you through the slides, and if you could sort of follow me as we go through the presentation. Again, any issues, members at all, put your hand up and give me a shout. There is an opportunity then at the end for members' discussion. So I maybe ask if questions could be kept to the end, and I can go back over the slides with you, and we can do that in an organised fashion. So if everybody's content, we're happy to proceed then. Yeah. So as required by the Planning General Permitted Development Amendment Order Northern Ireland 2020, the Council has been notified by Flint Ridge Resources Limited of a proposed boreholes drilling programme for the purposes of mineral exploration. The notification gives details of the location of the proposed development, the target minerals, details of the plant and operations, and the anticipated timescales. The Council has reviewed all that information and has also consulted with DERA, NIA, Shared Environmental Services, Fermanagh and Omagh District Council Environmental Health Service, and NI Water, who have all replied and responded with comments. And those have been provided to members for their information. Just to provide you with an update from the report, members, there is section 4 on the report refers to representations and advises no representations have been received. As I say, this is not a planning application, it's a notification, so there's no public consultation carried out. But we have received, or we have been copied into a representation which I understand was sent to several councillors. The planning department were copied into that, and that has been noted. So if we now turn to the presentation, members. Slide 2 then, just to let everybody know exactly where we're talking about. The centre of the slide shows Omagh, and then out to Dromore Road, you turn right then into the Cavanagh site. So I'm sure members are familiar with the area now, but that just identifies the location. Within the notification, the Flint Ridge has provided a figure 1, which is an outline of the lands in blue and red. And you'll see the screen in front of you then on slide 3 shows the mine site in red with blue land then identified as additional lands within their control. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see there the annotation, figure 1, outline of the freehold land in blue with proposed drill hole locations shown as red lines. And then it goes on, please note that some cases holes will be drilled at different angles from the same collar, and for this reason some of the lines are not visible in plan view. And there's also a separate high resolution PDF of that. So I'll come on to that in a second, but the screen in front of you, members, then shows an aerial view of the site, and you can see the additional lands in blue either side of the site. In terms of the planning history, just to go through the history of the site. So in May 95, Omagh Minerals Limited was granted permission for the extraction of gold, silver and other minerals from an open cast pit at Cavanagh, Omagh, and that's a 713. There was a subsequent application in 2000-0995 which altered the permission slightly in terms of the restoration. On 27th of July 15, planning permission was granted for an underground mining and associated surface level works, and that's reference K 2012-0373F, so it's a full application. There was a judicial review and a subsequent appeal against this decision, and that judicial review and appeal was unsuccessful. Omagh Minerals also secured planning permission in July 16 for exploration boreholes which would be drilled without the benefit of planning permission. And those two references are K 2011-0674/F, which was 13 holes in total, and K 2012-0197/F, which was 28 boreholes in total. Other history on the site then is in April 2020, there was an application for leave for judicial review challenging the failure by the council to take enforcement action in respect of alleged breaches of conditions, namely the drilling of boreholes within an area of blanket bog. Although boreholes were carried out without planning permission, the outcome of the judicial review was unsuccessful and the application for leave was dismissed. Within the notification then, members, we have details of all of the proposed locations of the drill pads, and that's included within Table 1. As you can see down the bottom, it's annotated as proposed drill hole locations and lengths. And I'll just take you through some of the details. So you can see on the left-hand side within the green box, headed start point, there's an easting and northing, and that identifies the location of the drill holes where the drills will be drilled from on the surface. You can see that although there are 17 in total, there's actually 8 drill start points, as the same drill start point will be used. and then the orientation will change to, with the underground drilling. So within that, there are 8 different drill pads and drill bases. Moving across then to the highlighted box in yellow, and that's the end point. And as you can see, within that, they're all different locations. So the drills may start at the same location in the top 2, but they'll end up in different locations at the bottom at the end point. And if we go across then to the final column, that's the length of the drill holes. And you can see they range in depth from 97 to 234 meters. So in terms of the figure 1 drawing again, just to go back to it, you can see the location then of the red lines on the screen. I've highlighted that with a red oval, members, just for your information. And you can see the location of that then in respect of the wider mine area and mine site. If we look then in more detail, just zooming into the figure, you can see then the red lines showing the location and orientation of the drills. And I've numbered them 1 to 8, and that's the location of the drills when they're starting the drilling. And as I say, there's 8 different drill pads. Within that then, they will drill in different directions, and that'll end up with the 17 drill lines. So if we just go through those then, you can see then, just zooming in even closer, the location of the top 4. So this is the drill pads where the drilling machine will sit, and then we'll drill down into the ground underneath the surface. And you can see they're not located in any sensitive areas, or there's no loss of trees or anything like that. The next 2 then, you can see the locations then are identified with the purple circles, and the orientations then, and the finish points. And finally the bottom 2 then, with the drill orientations shown on the screen. An important consideration for officers during the reaching a recommendation on this was that there's a protected area of bogland, and that's shown within the blue outlined area and annotated as area of bogland. That's to the west of the mine site, and the approval for 373 has a planning condition which states that no works, infill, storage or construction activity associated with the development, including the removal, dumping or storage of materials or tree planting, shall take place within these blanket bog areas. So you can see the red lines of the mine, of the drills, will not go into this area of bogland, and they don't cross the fence line. So the area of bogland that's protected by the condition is not affected by the proposed works. In terms of neighbours, again, the site outlined in red is the mine site, and the notification does provide information on the drilling programme. It's for a maximum of 16 weeks. Drilling will occur from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. weekdays and 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturdays. And just to, members to pick up, there's a slight misprint in the report. It says 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. It's actually 7 a.m. to 1 p.m., so it'll finish at lunchtime on a Saturday. And no drillings on a Sundays. Some of the nearest neighbours then are identified by the yellow circles, and you can see those on the screens. In terms of the drilling machine, the notification provides information on this, and it's a Duralite DL1000, and that's the spec sheet that has accompanies the notification. On the right-hand side then, I've just highlighted and pulled out the 3 photographs from the top of the screen just to provide members with an idea of what the drill machine will look like. The notification does include information on the level of noise that will come from the various equipment, and you can see that then in the table on the right-hand side, where the information is provided without barriers and with barriers. The with barriers then refers to the eco barriers that can be put up and will be put up if needed, and those are shown on the left of the slide, on slide 17, left of the slide, as green eco barriers. There's also a comment within the report, the notification, which says that the drilling contractor will use noise barriers with a point of contact, who is the chief geologist, who will ensure that noise mitigation measures are maintained and will respond to any noise complaints. So on slide 18 then, shows the location of the list of buildings, and those are shown on this slide by the blue circles. So you have the listed mill to the south, and then the bridge and the lime kiln. to the southeast. And then the location of the drill sites is in the top left corner of the slide. So finally then, members, in relation to the legislation, on slide 19, the direction restricting permitted development under Part 16 is included. And I've just cut that and put that onto the screen for everybody to see exactly what the legislation says, and this is what the Council must comply with tonight. The Council may make a direction under this article if it is satisfied that it is expedient that the development or any part of it should not be carried out unless permission for it is granted on an application. So what that means, members, in layman's terms, is you can say tonight that this should not be permitted development, but you can't stop the works going ahead. All you're saying is it's not permitted development and they have to apply for planning permission for the works. And if they want to carry out the works, then they have to make an application to the Council, and that will go through the due process with an outcome then against planning policy. This direction tonight under Part 2 doesn't refer to planning policy whatsoever, and planning policy is not a material consideration. The material considerations for you tonight, or the issues you have to take into account, are included in 2A, B, C, and D on the screen. So just go through those. So under A, the development is to be carried out on land which is within or affects a conservation area, a national park, a nature reserve, an AONB, an area of special scientific interest, or an ASSI, or a site of archaeological interest. So from the report, members will note that the site is not within or affects any of those listed sites. In terms of B, so the development either taken by itself or taken in conjunction with other development which is already being carried out in the area, or in respect of which notification has been given in pursuance of the provisions of Part 16, would cause serious detriment to the amenity of the area in which it is to be carried out, or would adversely affect the setting of a listed building. And again, that's considered within the report, and the outcome of that consideration is that it would not cause serious detriment to the amenity of the area, or adversely affect the setting of a listed building. C then is that the development would constitute a serious nuisance to the inhabitants of nearby residential building, hospital or school. And again, there are a number of houses nearby, and information has been provided on the level of noise that will come from the development. The Council Planning Department has consulted with the Council's Environmental Health Service, and they have seen that information and are content and raised no issues. So the view of officers is that this would not constitute a serious nuisance to the inhabitants of nearby residential building, and there's no hospital or school really in close proximity. And finally then, the development would endanger aircraft using a nearby airport. So there's no airports nearby. The drill equipment is low-lying and wouldn't affect any aircraft that may be flying over anyway. So for the reasons listed in the report, members, the recommendation then of officers is not to issue a direction, as it's not expedient to do so.
Okay, thank you, Darren, for that comprehensive report. So members, just at this stage, if anyone wants to come in with questions, again, just raise your hand and we'll bring you in. If anyone has any queries, they can raise them now. Yep. Collier McGill.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me all right.
Yep.
I suppose looking at this report, I'm actually quite concerned. I have a question to start off maybe, and if I'm permitted to come back in. It relates, I suppose, under the page 19 there, and primarily, I suppose, section B, which I think would be applicable here. Can the planners advise how many boreholes have been drilled at the Cavanagh site to date? Do we have that information to hand?
Okay, let Darren answer that one.
Okay, members, so as members will know, the power for planning transferred over to the Council in 2015, and prior to that was the Department of Environment. Now the Department of Infrastructure would have looked after planning applications at this site because it was a reasonably significant application. So in terms of the planning history, as I say, it's on the slide in front of you, the approval in 1995, another approval in 2015. After that then, the Council itself has granted planning permission retrospectively for 13 boreholes under K 2011 of 674, of which 12 of those were for mineral exploration. And then under K 2012 of 197, there was 28 boreholes, of which 27 were for mineral exploration. The other 2 on those applications were for groundwater monitoring. So the applications have been approved since 2016 are the 13 and the 28. In addition, the applicant, or the Oma Minerals Limited, it was identified that at least three additional boreholes were drilled without planning permission sometime in around 2016. So in total then, members, you'd have 13, 28 and 3 that the council knows about.
Thank you. Councillor, I'm going to let you come back in again, but the 3-minute speaking time does apply, so you said you had maybe additional queries to raise?
Yeah, well, I think that answers my question. I was presuming that it actually was a lot more than that, and I don't doubt that it is a lot more than that, given, I suppose, the history of the issues and just the general history with the operation at the site, and obviously the judicial review which was taken against this particular operation. I think on that alone, we have grounds to refuse permitted development rights, and I don't think as a council with a corporate position of opposing mining in the Sperrins that we should be progressing with this. Also in relation to item C there, the nuisance and serious nuisance to the inhabitants, and I know myself and a number of councillors have been contacted by people living in that area again today in relation to this. So there's obviously concerns around that. I think in terms of the actual, if we look at the council report, so the actual first paper A, paper A, it's quite concerning that the key issues identified here, having listened to that report, there don't seem to be anything recorded against financial issues, human resource or assets and other implications, where presumably to enforce the permitted development rights, there will be an element of monitoring and enforcement, so presumably there will be financial implications. In relation to equality and good relations, I would suggest that having people of Cavanagh contact myself and others in relation to this, issuing their own strong objections, that can't be right. And similarly, the fact that there are supposedly no rural proofing applications, I find quite staggering. Item 5.
Councillor, please do bring your comments to a conclusion.
Item
please.
5 there in sustainable development seems to suggest that this is actually supporting sustainable development, which again I can't quite see. I have queries really about the shift of ownership, how this is now an application being made under this Flint Ridge Resources Company. Previously Oma Minerals or Galantis or Cavanagh Corporation, whoever. Do we know who's actually behind all of this? And I know I'm short for time here, there's obviously a lot more that I could say having listened to that presentation, but the final point being that other councils, including Mid-Ulster District Council, have set a precedent of councils refusing permitted development right and sending that back to the department, or to go down the line of seeking planning permission, where obviously there will be higher level of scrutiny, monitoring and enforcement
Councillor, just time.
by the
Bring
department.
your comments to a close, please.
So I would think that everybody would be agreed our priority is to protect our environment and our people, and I don't see anything good in this report presented tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Gormagat. Have Councillor Irvine in next.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Darren, for a very comprehensive presentation and the accompanying documents, which I'm sure we've all read in regard to this. I'm happy with the information that you have provided, and therefore I'm prepared to go with the officer's recommendation.
Okay, so you're proposing the recommendation.
Proposal, thank you.
Thank you, Gormagat. So next I have Councillor Bernice Swift.
Gormagat, look, will you learn something new every day? Thanks for the presentation, Darren. And I was surprised that the Blanket Bog areas didn't come under any nice special naming. And it's obvious to me as well, funny enough, when I look at that, whoever has ever written up this guidance in the first place has never spent a day in the Pog in that hot weather, because it's very much like a national park, I can tell you, when you're trying to foot and bag turf. But all joking aside, can I ask Darren on the condition on slide 14, and I haven't my mind made up here yet, where it states about no works infill or storage of the construction activity with the development, including removal and dumping, shall take place within these blanket bog areas. Are we just saying if it does happen, enforcement kicks in? And I just would have a very serious concern, and given what has already been said, that boreholes have already taken place in that area, you know, what really are the problems? And I would foresee some difficulties if there are some, you know, detrimental materials going into the, what I would say, beautiful bogland. But can you just give me a definitive on that one, please, Darren Gurmagat?
Yeah, so members, if you want to go back to slide 14 on the presentation, this area of bogland, it is not protected by any statutory designation. It's an area of bogland that was identified during the planning application as being important, and the condition on the approval 373 specifically was put on to ensure that there was nothing happened in that bogland. And there's actually a fence running along the boundary between the bog and the mine site, and there's nothing is to happen beyond that fence. And that is above ground and below ground in my view. I don't think it's necessarily limited just to purely surface development. The key thing tonight, members, is that the orientation, the alignment, the direction and the depth of all the boreholes is on the right side of the line within the mine site. There's none of it goes to the left-hand side and goes into the bogland. There's also no storage, there's no equipment. The drill sites where the drill equipment is to be sited is away from the line, so it's not as though they're close to it. There's a significant distance between the two, and therefore there's no threat to the bog from the proposed works that have been notified to the council. Now, if they go ahead and they do works outside of the notification, then that is an enforcement matter, and it's something that planning enforcement team will pick up and the council will investigate, and I've no doubt will be brought to our attention. Officers are monitoring the site and do that quite regularly to check that the mine is being mined in an appropriate way in accordance with the conditions. So in terms of this notification, we are aware of when the start date is and where the finish date is, and officers will be out on both, and there may be intermittent visits in between as well. But I don't want to let everybody know what we're up to. The applicant knows they have to do this in accordance with notification. If it's not done in accordance with notification, then it doesn't have permitted development rights. And that's an important thing to remember. So any extra boreholes, any change in the orientation, changes in depth, various other things, means it's outside of the permitted development rights, and they will have to come back in for planning for that.
Supplementary then, on the fencing, Darren, you know, who decided and suggested that that went up? Did that come from the planning officers to the applicant? And what type of fence is it? I know that might seem a pedantic question.
No.
I'd be happy if it was an electric one to keep people out, but anyway.
Certainly, members, if anybody has any questions at all, feel free to ask, and I'll try and assist where I can. As I say, the application was approved prior to the transfer of powers. It was approved by the department, under 373. So the condition's on. There's also a condition to put the fence in. The fence has been put in. Now, it's a post and wire fence. It's not of any great merit, to be honest. It's not very robust, but it didn't require it to be robust in the conditions. They've done what they were required to do, and it is there. But it does provide a definitive, permanent, mark on the ground of where the line is.
Okay. So next I have Councillor Eamon Keenan.
Thank you. Yeah, just the three previous illegal boreholes. Was there any enforcement from that? And as well as that, the other was 28 and 13. Was those boreholes inspected while they were being done? That the orientation, depth, and all that was as planned?
So just go back to the planning history. As I say, there was an application in April 2020 against the council where the application was for leave for judicial review, challenging the failure by the council to take enforcement action against breaches of planning control, namely the drilling of boreholes. So that was brought to the council's attention. Officers did visit the site, and at the end of the the process and the outcome of the judicial review was that boreholes were drilled within the blanket bog without planning permission. Now, the council went to the courts and put forward a case that it wasn't expedient to take enforcement action in respect of those, and the judge ultimately agreed with that, that it wasn't expedient to do so. In terms of the other drill holes that were carried out, there's 13 under K12, K 2011-0674, and then the 28 under 0197. Officers didn't carry out an inspection of those. The file was transferred from the department to the council, and we were left then to determine it. So the works had already been carried out. So we didn't agree any information in respect of that.
Yeah, it's just like I'm looking at the orientation of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 13 of those boreholes, and they're very close to the perimeter of the bog. You know, it'd be very easy for a company that has a previous record of illegal activities to slip on under it there, you know, just.
Yeah. Yes, the judicial review, the application for leave for the judicial review did identify that the owners and the operators hadn't the best track record in complying with the planning law and regulations. However, in respect of this notification, the council can go back afterwards and ask for evidence that they have complied with that, and we can gather that information from this. It's detailed information that is very, it's tightly orientated and tightly pointed so that the eastings and northings and all of those things are specifically set on the ground, and the applicant knows exactly where they're drilling because it suits their business interests. They need to know where the gold is, ultimately. The council can go afterwards and seek confirmation of all of that and get that information in just to confirm that they have carried out in accordance with the drilling programme. And as I say, if they haven't, then they have to apply retrospectively for planning permission.
Yeah. It's just, is there a danger that, you know...
Councillor, I believe this is your last submission.
You know, we can only check after it's done. I suppose all we can go now on is their previous track record. But yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. Gormagat, thank you. Next, Collier Siobhan de Curry.
Gormagat Cairley and Gormagat Darren. Yeah, just a few checking the orientation. I think that if you look just the presentation just around the way we would maybe be going outside of permitted development rights, why we would be looking for planning. 2A says potentially it could potentially affect a protected area, if I'm just paraphrasing, but on 2B says the development either by itself or in conjunction with other development already being carried out would cause serious detriment to the amenity of the area in which it is to be carried out. And I don't know if we can know that without having the geological and the hydrogeological information, even in the most basic way. You know, you can do that on a desktop, you can do that without putting a borehole in the ground. I would just wonder really about that, who's checking, what about the orientation? How can we ensure that they will do what they say if they've already gone outside what they've said they'll do in the past? And just another query I have is considering fairly minor things that do actually require planning permission. This is large scale and potentially, depending on the outcome, if this got the go ahead, depending on what was found, potentially much, much larger scale. And, you know, if the exploration then does find what this company is looking for, which is gold, then the obvious consequence of that is the knock-on impact on the protected bogland beside it and on the wider area. So I'm not sure if it was proposed already, but I would be happy to propose that we don't go with the recommendation from the council and propose that we actually put it forward for planning permission.
Gormagat Collier. So I have two proposals. Oh, sorry. Yeah, do you want to come back in on that one, Darren?
Yes,
Sorry, go ahead.
it's okay, Councillor. If I just come back on some of the issues raised, and I don't want to take away from the recommendation, but just in some of the comments that are raised, this, as I say, members, this is not a planning application, so planning policies don't apply. This is purely a notification, and if you want to withdraw, the permitted development rights by issuing the direction, members have the power to do that. That power, though, must be based upon the legislation and the tests that are in the legislation. So the fact that they may find gold and that may lead to further expansive works later on, that would not be something that would be relevant tonight, and it wouldn't be something you could give weight to if you were issuing the direction. Okay. In terms of the information that accompanies the notification, the council has received all the information that the legislation requires. We have gone to the consultees and asked them for their expert opinion, and that includes Northern Ireland Environment Agency, the groundwater team, surface water team, and all the others. Environmental Health have commented and looked at the noise information. NI Water have looked at the impact on the drinking water. And then Shared Environmental Services have also carried out the Habitat Regulations assessment. So all of the information necessary to satisfy the expert consultees has been provided. And as officers, we wouldn't be looking at anything more, and there wouldn't be anything more that I would see necessary. And as I say, the legislation doesn't require that. In terms then of the restriction of the permitted development rights, as a member, if you wish to go ahead with a recommendation under Part 2A,
which has been referenced by prior speakers, involving respectively 13 boreholes and 28 boreholes, both of which subsequently received retrospective permission, but were unauthorised development at the time, were already on that site. To me, that draws a question mark over the trustworthiness of the promoter in the mind of the public. The first question, however, is there any information, I don't see it in the report, on the distance between the proposed boreholes and the water table? The second question is, given the concentration of boreholes that is now being proposed on a single site, and the knowledge that the concentration of boreholes results in an increased risk of unforeseen cracks and fissures, has a risk assessment of cumulative impact been conducted, especially in light of the unauthorised drilling? The third question is, has an assessment of hydrogeology of the area been conducted? And the reason I'm asking that is very similar to the last contribution by Councillor Curry, which is effectively that initial boring well boreholes, as we all know, are going down largely blind if we don't have that sort of information. And given the concentration, the proximity to, the potential proximity to water tables, and the fact that Northern Ireland Water Company, which I would not consider as very expert in terms of water safety, stating that it's a long distance from the intake. Now, what does long mean? Do we even know the distance involved? Finally, another question, two more questions. The Van Ruth plug that's been referenced in the report as a sealant, is there an estimate of the average life expectancy of a Van Ruth plug? I note that they're made out of aluminium and rubber. And is this a top-down Van Ruth plug? If so, is there an expectation that there will be a rise in gas pressure below the seal? And is there a risk assessment of the same? Final question is the open pits that's referenced. Has there been an assessment of the potential with global warming, a rise of extreme weather events, flooding, what have you, that we could have an overflow and that metals such as lead 2 sulfide, iron arsenic sulfide, and contaminants, even if in small quantities, could find their way into the wider environment? I have one comment after they come back. Thank you, Chair.
Gormagat, Collier, Darren, don't know where to start with that.
Yeah, okay, so a number of questions there. I'll take them in reverse order. In terms of the potential for extreme weather events, that's the same with any development site, and any developer would have to take into account the potential for extreme weather conditions. There's ample forecasts available now, and developers know what's ahead of you in the next week at least, so I wouldn't have any difficulty that the developer will know what they're going to encounter over the next week in terms of rainfall and can take action in response to that. They have 16 weeks to carry out the drilling programme, and within that 16 weeks then there's ample time in response to the weather that they may have to change. In terms of the Van Ruth plug, I don't know the average life expectancy. What I do know is that it's a commonly used method of sealing boreholes, and the cement then will be injected in as well as part of the sealing of the boreholes. It's an industry standard borehole that the industry uses worldwide, and I wouldn't confess to have any expertise on it. In terms of hydrology of the area, That information is all available. The 2 previous applications were accompanied by environmental statements, so there's a significant amount of information on the hydrology of the area. The consultees are well aware of the nearby hydrological links, so streams, etc., on the surface, and also aware of any underground issues that may result in response to that. The trustworthiness of the promoter is not something that's before you today, members, and I would caution that that is not something that is taken into account. It is raised as an issue and has been raised in judicial review, but as I say, if you're restricting the permitted development rights, it's because of the legislation, it's not because of the named operator. In terms then of the risk assessment over fissures, remember, if you could just repeat the question, there was a cough and I missed the comment. So you had asked about the concentration of boreholes and the increased risk assessment.
Microphone, Councillor.
Okay, better, yeah, thanks. Obviously, if you have a concentration of boreholes in a very small volume of soil or rock, the risk is that the rock will degrade in terms of its stability and structural solidity, and therefore there will be increased risk of fractures, fissures, and so on, and that these can lead to percolated contamination of water sources as a result of contaminants following the seam. Thank you, Chair. I was just asking if it's a risk assessment of that risk. Thank you.
So within the legislation, the council hasn't been notified of any of that information, and we don't have a risk assessment. However, as I say, what we do have is information on the number of boreholes and the nature of those, the depths, and where they're to be carried out. Consultees, who are the experts in terms of the impact on surface water and groundwaters, have seen all that information and are aware of the planning history on the site, and they have come back to the council and are content and raised no issues.
Chair, thank you. And I'd like to, on the basis of the response received there, and fearful that this development taken in conjunction with other development already carried out on the site, and which was unauthorised at the time, in the absence of risk assessment sought, would cause serious detriment to the amenity of the area, and by amenity I mean the desirable or useful features or facilities of a place, and by that I mean its environmental desirability. It's as a blanket bog region, and it's a source of groundwater, clean groundwater. I feel that it would be wrong as a council for us to allow further avoidance of proper scrutiny on this occasion, granting permitted development rights circumventing the planning process, and therefore I would like to second the proposal of Councillor Curry. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I'll just go back to Councillor Curry on that proposal, and given Darren's update around the various criteria, are you able just to elaborate on which criteria you feel?
Yes, Gormogat, and thank you, and I note that, Darren, so, and I take your points on much of it, but I think that we simply don't have the information in respect of the subground conditions to know that this won't cause serious detriment. You know, it's two sides of the same coin. As far as I'm concerned, this is saying that it won't, but we don't have that information to say, you know, we don't have the information available to us to say that. We don't know what impact it could have on the surrounding area either, because we don't have that. I don't think maybe you had, Darren, I'm not sure, but just around the depth, who's checking that? Is that going to be checked throughout the process? I think you did say about visiting the site, but how would that take place? And just on the dip as well, on the orientation of the boreholes, how is that going to be checked? Have we got the expertise to do that? So those are my concerns. I think that they haven't been answered, and I'm happy to keep with my proposal. Cormagat.
Collier. Well, I now have a proposal from Councillor Curry, seconded by Councillor O'Coffey, not to propose the recommendation. So I'm going to move that matter to a vote now. William McGill here.
Thank you, Chair. Could I?
Is this the second, the other proposal that was outstanding?
No, Chair, just a couple of points that I
No,
didn't
well, you've
get
been in,
raised
you've been on,
earlier to do with
Cordier, you've
water
been in on,
quality
no,
from
Gumel
the
Eshkil,
other
Gumel Eshkil,
responses.
Gumel Eshkil, you were already in one, so it was decent enough to let you in. For
Can
that
I get
period.
a recorded vote then, please,
Yes, so,
Chair? Thank
okay,
you.
proposal for recorded vote. Do we have a seconder? It's okay, well, that's fine, okay. So I'm going to move this to a vote now, members. Just bear with us one moment.
I didn't get in.
So, on the proposal of Councillor Curry, seconded by Councillor O'Coffey, that the Council requires the plan or the full plan of permission for this proposed works. Will I move this matter to a vote? So,
Sorry, Chair. So,
record-
I had my hand up for a question.
Well, I'm in the middle of this vote now, Councillor Deehan, but we'll let you in afterwards. The vote's already taken place.
But it's
recorded-
relevant to the
recorded
vote, Chair.
Well, we proceeded to a vote now, so I can't let you in, unfortunately. Sorry. So, Councillor Armstrong, Leanna.
Against.
Councillor Bird, Alex. Councillor Paul Blake, not here. Councillor Buchanan.
Against.
Councillor Campbell.
For.
Councillor Sean Clark. Absent. Councillor Coyle.
Against.
Councillor Curry.
Evaver. For.
Councillor Deehan.
For.
Councillor Donnelly Anne-Marie. Not here. Councillor Sean Donnelly. Absent. Councillor Stephen Donnelly. Absent. Councillor Keith Elliott. Councillor Deborah Erskine.
Against.
Councillor Anthony Feely.
For.
Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald. Absent. Councillor Adam Gannon.
Against.
Councillor Mary Garrity.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Green. Absent. Councillor Robert Irvine.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Eamon Keenan.
For.
Councillor Catherine Kelly. Councillor Podrigan Kelly. For. Councillor Tommy Maguire. Councillor Emmett McAleer. For. Councillor Councillor McCaffrey not voting. Councillor Stephen McCann not voting. Councillor John McClory.
Against.
Councillor Barry McElduff not voting. Councillor Garth McPhillip. Councillor Donald O'Coffey.
For.
Councillor Thomas O'Reilly.
For.
Councillor Alan Rainey. Councillor Paul Robinson.
Against.
Councillor Chris Smith. Absent. Councillor Bernice Swift.
For.
Councillor Earl Thompson not voting. Councillor Warrington. Sorry, Councillor Howard Thornton, sorry.
Against.
Against Howard. Councillor Warrington. Absent. And Councillor Wilson. Okay, so I'm just going to propose a 5-minute recess, okay? and the recording is now back on. The outcome of that vote was 11 for, 11 against, so the vote is tied. And as chair would normally have a deciding vote, however in this instance I'm unable to vote, so therefore that is a tie vote. It has no majority, and therefore the vote falls. So I did have Councillor Deehan looking in, so I now invite you if you want to take a moment, Councillor, and you can come in now.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Darren for his very comprehensive report, and thank you to the Bonacre staff for hosting us here this evening and all the excellent hospitality, so thank you. I want to refer, Chair, to page 19 of the report, and that is the directions restricting permitted development under Part 16, item 2.3, that the development would constitute a serious nuisance to the inhabitants of a nearby residential building, etc. Chair, and then with reference to page 17, and in respect of noise and the noise nuisance, I think there are a lot of questions that are unanswered in this report. On page 17, it states that the drilling contractor will use noise barriers, and there would be a point of contact who will ensure that noise mitigation measures are maintained and will respond to any noise complaints. You know, this is a very significant proposal, Chair, for a considerable number of boreholes. Now, drilling will be ongoing for 16 weeks during the weekday for 12 hours from 7 in the morning until 7 in the evening, and half-day Saturday. Noise, in my view, would be a very significant factor to consider. And I would just like Darren's opinion regarding what evidence have we that the local residents will not be subjected to noise, because all we have on page 17 is an indication that noise mitigation measures will be implemented, but we have no idea of how effective they're going to be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Just before Darren replies, Will at this stage say I had Councillor Bird, Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Feely looking in just before the vote, so that's the order I'm proceeding in. I will allow Councillor Irvine back in as you have an outstanding proposal, but in that order.
Okay, members, so just in respect of the information on the noise, the presentation really is to give you the information that accompanies the notification. And you'll note if you refer to that information that accompanies the notification, Appendix B, within the Flint Ridge Resources notification. So Appendix B is headed Noise Management, and it gives a method statement on noise reduction and includes the information on the noise levels from the drill machine, noise reduction techniques, acoustic measurements from the water pump and the generator, and noise reduction techniques for those. So that's some of the information from the Appendix B, Councillor, and I would refer you to that for more information. That information was sent over to the Council's Environmental Health Service, and the Planning Department asked for their comments, and they reviewed that information and have replied back that they are content in relation to the noise that will come from that. So the Council does have the information on the noise impact. It's included within the report, and we've sought expert advice from a consultee who has come back and provided the Council Planning Department with comments, and they are content as well.
Thank you, Darren. Councillor Bird, were you still looking in? No, okay. And now I have Councillor Armstrong. Diana.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Darren, for your report. And I'm happy with the explanations given and the expert consultations having been taken. So I'm happy to second the proposal by Councillor Irvine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So that proposal by Councillor Irvine, which was to propose the recommendations, has been seconded by Councillor Armstrong. So we're all members in agreement? No? I'm going to move that item to a vote now.
Chair, can I ask a procedural question just?
I'll allow it, Councillor, quickly.
Yeah, I just want to know if this, first of all, if this vote goes to a tie, does that mean we don't proceed with recommending the permitted development rate? Given that tomorrow's the deadline for this, I have serious concerns about how late in the day this has been brought to council, and I've no doubt that on behalf of at least seemingly the developer, that was fully intentional.
Councillor, sorry, I'll just...
The second question I'd like to ask.
Respect the chair, Lida Hull. No, I would just come in and say that although the evidence was submitted, we did receive the report on Friday, so we did have the whole entire weekend, and it was both NIEA and SASS had given their statements in good time, so we did have the entire weekend to...
Chair, not to us, Chair, but I just want to say that at what time on Friday, can I confirm what time it was issued on Friday?
I'm going to move this on to a vote now. I do have a proposal. It's been seconded. So
Chair, I have a second question as well, please, and it's in relation to the chairing of a meeting.
Vote.
Yeah. So I'm going to proceed now to the vote.
A recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote. So this is the proposal by Councillor Irvine, seconded by Councillor Armstrong to propose the recommendations, that the Council approves the recommendation detailed within the appended report. So we'll now move this on to a vote. Councillor Diana Armstrong?
For.
Councillor Alex Baird?
For.
Councillor Paul Blake, absent. Councillor Mark Buchanan?
For.
Councillor Glenn Campbell?
Inaya Caherty, against.
Councillor Sean Clark, absent. Councillor John Coyle?
For.
Councillor Siobhan Curry?
NI, against.
Councillor Josephine Deehan?
Against, Chair.
Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly? Absent. Councillor Sean Donnelly? Councillor Stephen Donnelly? Absent. Councillor Keith Elliott? Absent. Councillor Deborah Erskine?
For.
Councillor Anthony Feely?
Against.
Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald? Absent. Councillor Adam Gannon?
For.
Councillor Mary Garrity?
For, Chair.
Councillor Seamus Green is absent. Councillor Robert Irvine?
For, Chair.
Councillor Eamon Keenan?
Against.
Councillor Catherine Kelly? Not voting. Councillor Podrick Kelly?
Against.
Councillor Tommy Maguire?
NI, against.
Councillor Emmett McAleer?
Against.
Councillor McCaffrey? Not voting. Councillor Stephen McCann? Not voting. Councillor John McCloughery?
For.
Councillor Barry McElduff? Not voting. Councillor Garvin McPhillips? Absent. Councillor Donal O'Coffey?
Against.
Councillor Tomas O'Reilly?
Against.
Councillor Alan Rainey? Absent. Councillor Paul Robinson?
For.
Councillor Chris Smith is absent. Councillor Bernice Swift?
Against.
Councillor Thompson is not voting. Councillor Howard Thornton?
For.
Councillor Victor Warrington is absent. And Councillor Bert Wilson? Absent. Okay, members, just give us one moment. Okay, I'm going to invite Alison in here now.
Okay, Chair, thank you. So just to advise members, the results of that vote were 11 for and 11 against. So again, the proposal, there was no majority, so it was not carried. So therefore, the Council has been unable to reach a determination on the application. So that is the decision of this evening, that no decision has been reached by the Council. So that means then, as detailed in the report, it will be deemed permitted development. So that concludes the matter, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Alison. At this point, Councillor Thompson will be returning to the chair for the remainder of the meeting, but personally this is my first experience in the chair, in very unique circumstances, of course. But at this stage, I just want to thank you all for your cooperation in dealing in that matter. And also thank you to Alison and the council staff and to the staff here at the Bonacre Centre for facilitating this meeting tonight and for all the work they've put in to allow us to be here safely.
Chair, given tomorrow's the deadline, can we not meet tomorrow to re-vote? I'd like to raise a proposal saying so.
The matter is finished. There was a vote and we've reached a decision, and unfortunately in this case I have no deciding vote, so both votes were tied and the council has not been unable to provide a majority. We'll take now a 7-minute break and we'll be back at 8:30 for the DFI roads update.
Okay, councillors and officers and officials from DFI Road Service, you're all very welcome. And now we will carry on the meeting, reconvening the meeting now at item number 4, and it's to receive the delegation from the Department for Infrastructure, DFI Roads, regarding the Western Division Annual Report. So can I first of all welcome Mr. David McKinley, who's the Divisional Roads Manager for the West, Michelle Greer, I know there's a couple of different titles on you here, Michelle, Principal Engineer, and Brian Stewart, Section Engineer based in the castle in Enniskillen. So without further ado, David, if you want.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Hello, Councillor. I have pleasure in submitting the 21-22 annual report for the work of Road Service across Fermanagh and Omagh District Council. This report sets out work completed across the council area during the year 2021 and sets out our initial proposals for schemes to be undertaken this year. The opportunity is also taken to provide an update on strategic road schemes in the council area. The past year, unprecedented, owing to the impact of COVID-19. Thankfully, our contractors developed new working procedures to enable much-needed road maintenance and improvement work to proceed, and the impact was mitigated as far as possible. Much of our 2021 programme was successfully delivered despite the absence of work in the first part of the year. Since 2013, the Department for Infrastructure baseline resource budget has been insufficient, and we have relied on in-year funding to deliver much-needed public transport and winter gritting, and unfortunately this continues to be the case. This year's structural maintenance capital allocation was to be substantially increased from a typical opening allocation of around 75 million to 120 million, of which 17 million had been set aside for the Road Recovery Fund. This would have been a significant move towards our 143 million, which is recognised as required to maintain the roadwork in a reasonable condition. Now, such an increase was a welcome development, and that would have translated into tangible action and gone some way towards addressing the backlog of structural maintenance on our network. As you will appreciate, the Department's ability to spend a significantly increased capital allocation is dependent on having sufficient contracting resource to hand to deliver the work. However, as a result of legal challenges to the award of asphalt resurfacing contracts for Omagh, Mid-Ulster and the Derry and Strabane council areas, the Roads and Rivers Centre procurement exercise came to the decision to discontinue the competition for the asphalt resurfacing contracts. I would, however, like to assure you that officials are developing new interim procurement strategy for resurfacing contracts going forward, and it's hoped that new tender competitions can be released to the market in autumn 2021. The Department is also looking at exploring alternative ways to deliver much-needed resurfacing works in the area. The consequences of this will be the delay in resurfacing programmes in the area. However, as work on the mitigation measures is currently in progress, it is not yet possible to quantify the total amount of investment that will be affected in the 21-22 year. This is most disappointing for the Department and for all road users, given that badly needed capital investment will be delayed. On the major project side, following the A5 dual carriageway public inquiry, the Minister decided to comply with the recommendations of the PAC, as she believes this is the most efficient and practical means of getting the scheme through to a new formal decision within the shortest possible timescale. The project team is now following due process and working towards the publication of a new environmental statement addendum. And this will be followed by a statutory consultation period. And it's expected that the public inquiry will be reconvened early next year. I'm also delighted that on the 11th of May past, the Minister for Infrastructure, having considered all the environmental information, announced her decision to make the statutory orders for the A4 Enniskillen and Southern bypass. On the capital funding side, this always influenced our active travel and our local transport and safety measures programmes, which in any year are based on available budgets. In the 21-22, significant additional funding is being made available for active travel schemes that will encourage walking, wheeling and cycling and safer routes to schools. This will allow the introduction of a further tranche of part-time 20-mile-an-hour speed limits at our schools in the Fermanagh and Omagh area. The opening allocation for routine maintenance for our resource funding is also similar to that for last year, and I'm pleased to report that the Minister has allocated sufficient funding to allow a full street lighting repair service for the entire year. Funding continues to result, while funding constraints continue to result in the operation of a limited service, the funding that is available allows the Department to repair defects greater than 50 millimetres on all roads, including low traffic roads, and undertake 2 cuts of grass on our roadside verges. Our request inquiry forms can be used to raise local issues within the Department or deal with matters that are not directly related to the report. And I would encourage the councillors to avail of this online fault reporting system on NI Direct. My staff obviously are always available to meet and discuss any issues with you. Hope you find the report informative, and we look forward to talking to you afterwards, along with Michelle Greer, our Principal Engineer, and Brian Stewart, our Section Engineer. If we could move to page 5 in the report, sets out some of the statistics that we have. In the Western Division, we have nearly 10,000 kilometres of roads and 2,800 bridges. And it sets out our 4 main areas of work in terms of strategic road improvements, our network maintenance, our network development, and our network planning areas. If you move with me, please, to page 7, where we'll do a short report on our strategic roads improvements, led by Seamus Keenan and assisted by Manny Galt and Ryan Devlin. Page 9 sets out the situation, as I just briefly summarised there in the forward, on the A5 dual carriageway. The main point, just to reiterate again, is hope that the final report on the inquiry proceedings can be delivered by the PAC later in 2022 after completion of the public inquiry, and subject to a positive outcome from this report and the completion of all the necessary statutory procedures and environmental assessments. This could actually lead to construction commencing in 2023. Closer to where we are now, page 10, the Enniskillen Southern Bypass. Probably the last paragraph encapsulates where we are. As I said, on the 11th of May, the Minister announced her decision to proceed to make the statutory orders. Those, I believe, were published either today or tomorrow. The direction order should become operative on the 11th of August, and the vesting order on the 24th of August. So we're getting that scheme into a really good position to deliver. Page 11, improvements on the A2 Enniskillen to Omagh. The situation still remains in the Cornamuck improvement and the offline realignment. The direction order was made in 15 and the lands were vested in 17. The archaeological investigation is complete. This vegetation removal has been completed, and the position is now that we're ready to go to procurement, subject to the availability of funding. The bottom line there just summarises there that we have a scheme identified and alignment developed for Kilcourt and a league there at the Balnamallet River, although the progression of this will depend on the availability of funding. Over to network maintenance, where Michelle Greer, assisted by Brian and Sean Hackett. Page 13 just sets out what we do in terms of trying to maintain our carriageways in terms of resurfacing and surface dressing and whatnot. Page 14, if you move to that, just bottom 2 paragraphs on that page, just to set out that because of the volume of general correspondence reporting routine defects, we are encouraging reporting through our online report of fault section on our website, or alternatively use the phone line. The vast majority of our dealings with the public are by phone or email, and so we can continue now to leave the section offices just open to the public between 10 and 12 noon. Although, as I said before, meetings can be arranged with our staff at any time. Page 15 to 20, in terms of what we have achieved the previous year, year 2021, sets out what we've done in resurfacing. We managed to achieve in both Omagh East and West 81 kilometres of resurfacing at a cost of almost 7 million. That includes the rural road funded schemes that we've done, which was quite a welcome funding, and those are listed on page 16 and 18 within that section, page 15 to 20. And you can read those after your leisure. We move forward to page Drainage Works, page 25 to 27. You can see there The drainage works that were completed last year, both in Omagh West and in Omagh East. Omagh West with 15,100 gullies cleaned, which is a very, very, given the weathers that we're having, is a very, very important part of the aspect of what we do. Omagh East there, you see another list there, various drainage works were completed that year as well. And we cleaned 7,500. We didn't manage to get all our gullies cleaned in Omagh East, owing to various things in terms of staff resource and whatnot. Moving on to page 28, completed footway surfacing in year 2021. You'll see a list there for 4 or 5 schemes, each there for Omagh East and Omagh West. Nearly 2 kilometres delivered there in Omagh West, and you'll see there's just over 1 kilometre delivered in Omagh East. Page 29 just sets out the routine maintenance completed. The verges were cut twice last year, almost 7,500 kilometres. And defects, we continue to monitor those under our restricted maintenance regime. There was 3,761 defects picked up last year, and 91%, which was a good achievement, was actually repaired within the specified timescales. Moving to page 30, winter service. We managed to get through the winter again. Winter service, Omagh West. Last year there were 74 occasions when the gritters were called out. The first event taking place on the 3rd of November. And there were 3 more occasions in Omagh East, 77 occasions. And there were first application there was on the 2nd of November. If you want to move on to page 31, in terms of street works, quite a demand on our staff resource is the management of the utilities and the maintenance and removal of utility plant within our public roads. The bottom paragraph sort of sets out in the summary there, whereby we have 1,210 notifications of intention to excavate on the carriageway. In Omagh West, 361 inspections carried out, 4.4% were found to be unsatisfactory in terms of reinstatement. Likewise in Omagh East with 1,185 notifications, 326 were subject to inspection and 42.2% were found to be unsatisfactory. Page 32, structural maintenance planned this year in 21-22. The following, we have a cost of 3 million. We have a programme set out there for Omagh West. You'll see there Belturbet Road, various schemes planned, and in the event of more in-year funding, we have Latowan Road sitting there. The unfortunate news in terms of Omagh East, working from Arvalee, you'll see the paragraph there on top of page 33, where we have currently no access to an asphalt resurfacing contractor, and we're currently pursuing alternative procurement strategy for new measure term contracts in place for hopefully for January. And we're also pursuing open tender large resurfacing works to the value of about 1 to 1.5 million, so that we can get work on the ground in this district at the earliest possible opportunity. Pages 33 to 37 set out just a programme from our section engineers for surface dressing for this year, and the plan to resurface just over 260, or surface dress just over 260 kilometres of road. Page 37 and 38, apologies, there's a typo there, just where it says drainage proposals 2021, that should be 21-22. And you'll see there's a small programme there and for drainage proposals in Omagh East and Omagh West. Moving to page 38, you see a couple of footway schemes we have currently planned this year in 21-22. Page 39, we want a network development managed by Harry Gallagher and assisted by Colin McElhone and Tracy Bratton. Page 40, if I take you to that, completed schemes in 2021 for our local transport and safety measures, just LTSM. And the following LTSM were completed during the 2021 financial year at a cost of just around £1 million. 360 of the programme was funded through the successful active travel bids for walking and cycling. 200k was allocated for installation of part-time traffic speed limits at schools. And just below that then we have a list of what we plan to do this year in terms of carriageway improvements. One of the main headlines there is, you'll be glad to hear, Derry Lynn Road at Derry Howlett, which we have all the funding in place now to complete that, which was most welcome. Apologies. could have sworn I turned that thing off. Sorry about that. Anyways, traffic calming last year, page 41. Page 41, traffic calming, you will see there a list of what we done last year. Traffic signals last year, upgrades on signals there, mainly for changes to the traffic controllers and whatnot. There's a list there. That's quite a list was achieved last year. Page 43, pedestrian measures. Again, there's 4 or 5 little schemes were completed last year. Cycling measures in 2021 on page 44. Beltney Road, Dublin Road, Omagh, and so forth. Pedestrian measures control crossings. In 2021, there was 3 or 4 delivered there. One of note there is the Brownhill Link Road, which I was delighted to see put in place. There was an unfortunate fatality there 18 months, 2 years ago. Page 46, part-time speed limits delivered last year. We're still delivering that programme. We're working on it. There's 3 or 4 of them have now been completed, and there's 3 or 4 yet. They're just being completed as we speak. Road markings and signs delivered last year, and a range of signs and markings. They're listed on page 45 to 50, and that was across the entire council area. If you move on, councillors, to page 51, LTS traffic measures planned for this year. In support of the Minister's desire to introduce further transit part-time speed limits across Northern Ireland, the LTSM budget has been increased by 180,000, and that brings the total allocation for LTSM to 1.4 million, which is very welcome. You'll see below there you have a list of carriageway improvements onto the LTSM funding for 21-22. Pedestrian measures 21-22, again page 52, you'll see those listed out there. There's about 10 or 11 schemes there we want to deliver this year. Traffic signal improvements there again you'll see, and the control crossings. Control crossings this year with 6 sites we want to address. Page 53, cycle measures, again 4 or 5 schemes there we want to get to this year as well. And again 21-22 markings you see there for Belturbet Road and so forth. Bottom line there, part-time 20s, the Minister wants to deliver, she's put in place funding for another tranche of those, and she'll be making an announcement on that in due course. One park and ride scheme, we have a wee bit of work there at the Crevena Park and Ride in Omagh. We're putting on a trolley pole and traffic camera. I had to ask what that was, and the trolley pole is the kit at the top of the pole where the camera can rotate and so forth, apparently. And you'll see a little list there at the bottom of page 54, where it's intended that the following local transport and safety measures will be progressed to detail and design. So additional funding does come to hand, and we can hopefully get to those as well. Page 55 are structures in terms of bridge maintenance and guard beam, vehicle restraint system as we call it, led by Darren Campbell and supported by Robin Cuddy. 2021, delivered a programme there, you'll see below there on page 55 and 56, to the value of £418,000. And these varied from floods damage repairs to vehicle impact damage and parapets and so forth. Page 58, just a small list there of damaged vehicle guard beam that was repaired at the value of £80,000 in the district. Planned for this year, we have a budget of 554,000, which is good, and you'll see a list there of bridge works we plan to do and complete. You'll notice at the bottom there we're eventually getting to the completion of Bracky Bridge there in the Drennan Road, which is most welcome given that thing's been washed out now for over 2 years. Street lighting on page 60, managed by Harry Gallagher and assisted by Martin. Last year, the total number of lights in the district now is 17,800 odd. And regular righties repairs are carried out following reports from defects, elected representatives and our general public via our online reporting system. The spend of street lighting during last year amounted to just over 1 million for maintenance, including 592 on energy, that is to say electricity. And the total capital expenditure amounted to 1.46 million, which included over $500,000 on the LED lantern retrofit replacements. Page 61 and 62 there, you'll see a list there of all the streetlight schemes we've done that year. And going from streetlight renewal schemes to LED retrofits. Page 63, work plan by Martin this year, 21-22. He has a budget of 1.33 million this year. The capital schemes, allocated for capital schemes, and 535 of that is for LED lantern retrofits as well, and 235,000 for cable repairs and outages. Page 63 and 64 just sets out that programme that we hope to deliver this year. Network planning on page 65, Chairman, Councillors, led by Gordon Noble now, who came across from our SRI on promotion. And he's now supported by Tracy Flanagan and Paul Cassidy in our private streets section. Planning consultations last year, through the headline there is that last paragraph, the first section, that there was 855 planning consultations in the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council area, ranging from single dwellings to more complex mixed housing and retailing applications. We've been successful this year in terms of private streets in adopting 8 private streets within developments and adding another 1.7 kilometres to the maintained network. And they're listed below there, as you'll see. On page 67, in terms of private streets enforcements, we continue to take on enforcement action where a developer either is unwilling or unable to deliver on their infrastructure. However, we do have a finite contracting resource at our disposal, and given the variations in annual funding available of contracting resource, it's difficult to deliver it and to be assured when we can actually do these things. And also, with no real control over other outside influences, such as the repairs to sewers that any water might need on a development. We completed one enforcement action last year for Drumburgus Road North, Lisnaskea, so that was good. And we are currently pursuing 6 or 7 along there, undertaking enforcement completion works from Spruce Hill, Briars Hill, Irvinstown to Breezy Park. So there's a list there on page 68. And Chairman, Councillor, that is a very brief run-through of our report this year. And we're happy to take any questions or queries.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. And I know several have indicated already, and there are more hands going up here now. Can I just say, first of all, you've all been at your DEA meetings, so we're sticking to this report. I want your comments, your queries, your questions to be brief and to the point, and hopefully they'll be answered in that way as well. First hand I have seen is Councillor Howard Thornton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I have 3 points, and just to be very brief. First of all, the main bottleneck to traffic in Enniskillen is obviously on the Wellington Road. We've had phase 1. I don't see any mention in this document about phases 2 and 3. Perhaps you could comment on that. The second issue in Enniskillen continually is no maintenance of footpaths. We've been told because of gas, there's a big wait until the gas is piped round. There doesn't seem to be any programme or budget set aside for that, and I ask for update on that. And the third item is, since becoming a councillor, I have been unsure as to exactly who is responsible for grass cutting in my area, Enniskillen and the surround. And what I would like is the Chief Executive, if they could arrange a workshop with your people to determine exactly who is responsible for what with regard to grass cutting in the Enniskillen area. That is a very brief of what I want to say, Chair.
Thank you very much for being brief, Councillor Thornton. Maybe if David wants to come back there, or
yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've noticed you commented on Wellington Road, phase 1, 2 and 3. Phase 1, 2 and 3 are not terms that I really recognise in terms of Wellington Road. I do know we had a programme of various improvements of junctions and car park accesses and whatnot, and we've done quite a few of them. What I would say is that the big one for me is the new East Bridge, trying to get 4 lanes of traffic on that. And we've had a study done there, it's actually several years ago now, and it has come down with the recommendation that we should actually widen the existing new East Bridge. It's not new anymore, obviously. But to do that, because we're in the age now, we need to respect and preserve our footways and widen them. Sorry, we could put 4 lanes of traffic on the new East Bridge, but that would involve taking off a footway, so we accept now we have to widen the bridge. which will be a considerable cost. Now, running alongside that, our Minister has asked it, and we are now in the process of commissioning a consultant to undertake an active travel study in Enniskillen Town Centre in anticipation of reduced congestion upon the completion of the bypass. Now, my hope would be that that would unlock funding and bring things forward, and which, to me, the main one now is now getting 4 lanes of traffic across the new East Bridge. So that's where that is, but we're not working on it. We're not developing a design on it. We've done an option study, but if we can get some hint that we could get that funded, we would like them to start and develop a design on that. With regard to footway maintenance and funding, Brian, do you want to come in?
I suppose it's really the same as we discussed at the DA meeting. There are a number of services, from fibrous to the gas to everybody really, and anyone that wants to come in at the moment within roll out to the new broadband, they're digging up the footpaths. We have a plan in place to come in whenever they have finished, and we're talking to all the different agencies or services, and whenever they're finished, we're going to work through that programme to get them completed. But I suppose, as I've said before, there's no point us going in now and spending hundreds of thousands of pounds renewing footpaths out around housing estates to have them ripped up again and then come back in and leave them like a patchwork quilt whenever we're finished.
Councillor Thornton, you want to come back in very quickly? No.
Sorry, in other areas like Dungannon, the road service did start working with SDN and started. That's what I'm looking for in Enniskillen. It's not just Enniskillen, it's happened in other towns, and road service has worked to progress as soon as SDN are finished within a certain area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thornton. Okay, David. Right, on to the next councillor, Councillor Stephen McCann.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thanks, David and the team for the report. Just very briefly, David, I just want to welcome some of the proposed works in the West Tyrone DA, especially around Fintona and Thrillick. I do want to just say it's a bit frustrating that, again, we see the speed, the traffic camera measures proposed for Thrillick, the Kilskeary Road, Girgaddis Road and Erflin Road is still not, it's on the long finger basically. There's no definitive start date for that. And that's frustrating all the more so whenever just in the last couple of weeks there was quite a significant accident on the main street involving an agricultural vehicle, which did cause some significant damage to a residential property, and thankfully there was nobody injured. So I just, I would like to see that being progressed a bit quicker than what it has been. It's been in this report now for the past number of years now. And further to that, I also recently contacted your office in relation to a gap in provision of a footpath on the Girgaddis Road, and I've been in correspondence with your team in relation to that. I do think it requires a certain degree of urgency given its location, and this has been on the agenda now for quite a while, and I say quite a while, I mean maybe 10 plus years. And the reason why I mentioned tonight is that just given its location, it services the local leisure centre, it services the local play park, it services the GAA pitch, and it's also on a very heavy pedestrianised route, and I do appreciate it's not clear cut in that area, but given the footfall that it does have, and obviously with the accident that we just seen recently, there's a genuine fear that, there's a real risk there. So I'd like to see that maybe given a bit of urgency as well, David. But thanks for the good work that's going on, and Sinead, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. Next up is Councillor Catherine Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. I'm somewhat unusual as a councillor because I thank David for all the work that has been done in my area. I called the council about warning signs on the Craig and Crockenboy Road, and within 3 weeks I'd had a site visit and the signs erected. So I want to acknowledge the really good work that is being done. The drainage scheme on the Craig and Carrickmore Road was really welcomed. However, it has left a lot of very bad potholes and exposed drains, and some cars have got damaged in recent days. But overall, Roxtown Road, Devesky Road, Taruni Road, Crockenboy Road, the work has been first class, and I really want to acknowledge you and thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Catherine Kelly. Happy enough. Councillor John McCloughery.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of small things. The contractors doing the grass verges, do they do any specific training on how to cut? Because the quality of the cutting in some places is desirable. A man described somebody said a child with a quad and a big log would have done a better job than some of the work that they've done. And it's just, I know you have to take what you get, but sometimes some of these contractors, there's young fellas on tractors and they don't seem to have a clue how to use the hedge cutting machinery that they have. And the other thing is an urban myth to do with procurement. Last year there was a piece of the road bubbled up in Kesh and the tar was replaced. It took 2 days, and the locals had a story that it was because you could only get tarmac from a quarry in Lisnaskea, whereas we had a quarry about 3.5 miles up the road that makes tar as well. And is that you're tied to one quarry within the area, or can you simply not, as another agency I worked with, they simply write to them all and say, this is the price we're prepared to pay, will you supply us if we ring you? And you know, that job might have been completed in one day rather than having to come back a second day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCloughery. Have you any answers for him, David?
Thank you, Chairman. Contractor quality grass cutting, it does come up in various areas, and I do get the point. I don't really have an answer other than we just have to try and keep asking them to slow down, because you'll see that the external contractors, they'll cut a lot more grass in a week than our internal, because they'll work all hours. They'll be working night and day.
Sorry.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I know a wee bit more on this than David. Just a wee bit.
That's called delegation, Brian.
As most of you know, any other year our O&M contractors come in and they knew not only the areas, but they even knew wherever the stones were on the verges. This year, with a reduction in resource, they were moved to carry out different activities. Should it have been patching to keep the potholes filled or surface dressing, so we brought in a contractor to try and do it. It's their first time in to carry out the whole grass cutting in the Fermanagh area, and whenever they got at it, they just took off. So whenever we got out around the roads to see it, we've brought them back over again, the things that wasn't done right. We brought them into meetings, we've showed them the specification the way we wanted it, and hopefully now they're starting the second cut on the 1st of August, and from day one with that, it'll be cut the way it had been cut by the O&M contractors in the past. So I know a few of you have been in contact with us to try and get different sidelines in different areas cut, and they've assured us they're going to keep a tractor out there with an experienced man on it, cutting that and cutting back the danger areas and areas that we have a few concerns about. So fingers crossed it'll go according to schedule come August time. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. Next up is Councillor Donald O'Coffey.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chairman. I can comment on the way where the contractors are hauling bitmag from way farther away than the closest quarry. Well, they tender, they get the work, and as long as a registered supplier who's got all the proper qualifications to produce the bitmag in Niceville, they can purchase it anywhere. But I'd say they probably just won't go and buy it from a competitor, because that's the nature of the game. That's, you know, we manufacture it and take all the profit from start to finish, rather than giving some profit to a competitor. And we don't really have much control on that. All we do need to know is that it's coming from a registered and a certified bitmag or asphalt supplier. So it's outside of our control. As long as the material is up to spec, that's all we can do. Go ahead.
Sorry, I keep interrupting them. That patch that you're chatting about in particular, whenever we seen it, we actually brought our own O&M contractors in to do it. And they went down the road, got it dug out, found what the fault was, and brought the material in as quick as they could to get it fixed. and it came from that contractor or that supplier that was first on the tender to supply us with it, to all the specifications and the tests that they had to do. So it stayed, hopefully it lasts, and going there and taking an extra day was worth it in the long run. So.
Okay, Councillor McCloughy. Apologies for that. Councillor Donald Coffey.
Thank you, Chair. I have 4 brief points, 4 questions. First is in relation to the Enniskillen bypass. I'd like to welcome moves to vest the land in the coming months. It's a long time coming. A question in relation to the town centre study that's referenced on page 10, and whether, 2 points, whether it will include any proposal to include a cycle path on Wellington Road. I note you were talking about a 4-lane, but my information from somebody is that there may be a cycle path being proposed there. And the second issue is whether it will include consideration of peak period congestion on corner grade and feeder roads such as Derrin Road in Enniskillen. The second point is relevant to page 68, where there's a list of new estate roads that have been adopted, which is positive and I wish to welcome. But we also need to see investment in terms of the ones we already have, that already have been adopted by DFI. As Councillor Thornton has said, the roads into estates in Enniskillen are becoming highly degraded, awaiting investment due to the laying of gas pipelines, and I'd just like to seek clarification that if after the end of this period, when these pipelines are actually laid, that there will be works to renovate them after all. The third question is in relation to 2 issues which I wish to welcome. First is on page 53. The Queen Street Enniskillen cycle path proposal, and also the footpath realignment and widening of carriageway at Castle Cool Road on the junction of Temple Road. A question is really in relation to how far the works on that will extend up the Castle Cool Road. And the fourth point is in relation to page 61 and 62, lighting in estates, which again I'm glad to see that LED lighting going in. But is it true, what I've heard, that lighting has been provided into these estates, but on the condition that it's been removed from alleyways at the back of the estates? Because that's obviously a concern for safety of residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coffey. David?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Councillor Coffey. Enniskillen bypass study, town centre study, it is an active travel study and a study to try and make places, and it will include for cycle paths. And in terms of looking at different junctions like Corner Grade Road and all the rest of it, it will look at those in terms of what we can do to make movement by pedestrians and cyclists more free, easier. In terms of adoptions, after the gas lines and whatnot have been put in, funding will be again dependent just on a year-by-year basis. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of a 3 or 4 or 5 year rolling programme. It's still, and indications are, it's going to remain at 1-year budgets. So unfortunately, I can't really comment that we will be successful in our bids to get more money to renew footways. You mentioned the extent of the footway cycleway, Castle Road, was it? I'm not familiar with the detail of that, but if you can include that in your list, we can get back to you with the detail on that. The removal of the rear streetlights, it is our policy, and has been for some time now, when we're doing a streetlight renewal. We don't generally provide streetlights to both front and back. Our policy is that we provide street lighting to the front of the dwellings, and the service alleyways at the back, we don't provide that. And it is causing a wee bit of contention now and again where people have had the benefit of that, and we go to renew, and actually we don't renew, we remove. So I do understand the concerns, particularly from older people who have had the benefit of that over the years. But it's just unfortunately the policy now that we are wed to.
Okay. Thank you, David. Councillor Coffey, okay. Next up is Councillor Glenn Campbell.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I too want to welcome the report and commend David and the team for what is always a comprehensive report on work done and work that you would like to do if you had more funding, I suppose. I want to welcome in particular the Roads Recovery Fund. You acknowledged quite a bit of work in the second half of the year in that, and that's certainly, I may live on one of those roads, the Keeldrum Road, but many roads beside certainly benefited from that fund, and also the 20 miles per hour speed limit in Eskra, which I had been lobbying for as a public representative, but also a member of the Board of Governors. So I do thank you for the update. In terms of the A5, I know the A5N2, it's an ongoing saga. It's not something that David or the team can do anything about at this point, but it does feel a bit like Groundhog Day, really, when we're faced with delay after delay. And I suppose the public expectation is that the department won't slip up and that we would be in a better position. But I suppose people are disheartened a bit. That's maybe an understatement, but I know there's nothing that your team can do at this point in relation to that. Another issue I wanted to raise, I've only two issues really to raise that I think are relevant to yourselves really. In Eskra there is plans to bring NIE power cables, which I know you're aware of, underground and probably overground in places, through Eskra towards the A5 Girvahy direction. And it's my understanding that NIE are deciding on two possible routes. I think there was one route at the beginning, but now another route is in the frame really, and it's an issue around bogland perhaps. But while they're deciding, obviously there's delays, because as Brian has said, you don't want to fix roads and then have NIE will only put the road back. It'll be like a patchwork, as you say. I didn't fully appreciate this at the time. I thought, well, fix the road, let them put it back the way it was. But it doesn't work like that, because they'll only repair the track that they've disturbed in the road. So, I mean, what's the indication? I think from speaking to NIE, it's not good in terms of a decision on that route. It could be perhaps well into next year before that's sort of started. So I am concerned that some roads in Eskra are being set to one side for a prolonged period. Roads like the Altnaver Road, roads like Spring Hill, Newton Savile Junction, areas that have been on the agenda for a while. And obviously, if that decision was taken, well then we could start focusing on roads that aren't being affected, you know, and maybe we should be doing that already, that aren't in the frame, like Carbo, Garvala, Dunbiggin roads. So that's one thing, the NIE delay in Eskra. And then the other thing I want to raise is the recent correspondence from Alistair Greer in relation to the Liscarty Road in Dromore on the A32. And the A32, as you'll know, has several locations where there's, I would call them passing bays, but I suppose technically there's bus stops there as well, you know, and there's a bus stop at this location too, so possibly not a passing bay as such, but nevertheless a widening in the road that facilitates somebody turning right, and that's badly needed at Liscarty Road. But I've been advised that undertaking passing bays are no longer considered up to standard, and also that in this case a right turn pocket is not deemed necessary. What's the thoughts on those passing bays? Is that a recent development that they are no longer supported? Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. David?
Undertaking bays.
Even more agriculture. Thank you, Councillor. Last point first. Actually, Alistair is right. I, as an engineer, years ago, I was responsible for putting in quite a few near-side passing bays in various roads, but they are now not within the policy, not within the DMRB, the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges, which is unfortunate, because I was a fan of them actually. I thought they did work, and somebody was indicating right, at least you had a chance to slide through. So he is right in that regard, and he's probably looked at the assessment in terms of the vehicle numbers turning right. It probably doesn't justify it. Not to say it would be nice to have, but it's just unfortunate that's the way it is. Eskra Road, NIE cabling, I get the point. You know, you're pushing it back all the time. There's much need resurfacing has been delayed. All I can say is we just continue to inspect and repair, and that's, to me, it's annoying, because what I want to do is get thickness of carpet on the road and build life back into what is the biggest asset in Northern Ireland as our roads infrastructure. So I take the point, but you just have to manage it and manage your way through it. The other point you made was the A5. Yeah, absolutely. Our SRI team, they're just so disappointed the way it's moving on and on. But they remain completely and utterly committed to it, as does the Minister.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Councillor Cabell. Next up is Councillor Siobhan Curry.
Got it. Gurmagad Carley, and Gurmagad David and team.
Sorry, Councillor Curry, could you just raise your voice? I know you're on the mic, but if you can raise
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Just to thank you, thanks for the work that's been carried out in the last year in Erin North. There has been a substantial amount of work carried out there, and just also to welcome the scheduled works for the year ahead as well. Just a few points. So just on the A32 and those points just that are mentioned there, but I'm trusting just that it's being prioritised, because we're all aware that the A32 was a strategic route at the time that the hospital moved, and where are we 20 years into that? So it's not looking like a priority. So I just hope that comes sooner rather than later. I note just, David, that you mentioned about vegetation being removed, and I was just wondering at what point that becomes wasted money, you know, if you're doing that and then, you know, it regrows. Just in terms of the Lockshore Road, which not really in my DEA, but of course the people from Balik and other parts of our north are up and down it every day. There's money going on this every year. You know, there's obviously a massive issue there with subsidence. Is there any long-term sustainable solution being looked at? You know, we know that's what's required. Is there alternative routes even looking? You know, there is the Glenashaver Road. I don't know whether that has ever been looked at seriously, whether there's any thought in that direction at all. I note just the tempo footpath and the scoping works, and that's welcome that the scoping works, but there is an urgency there, and we have been raising that for well, probably before we were on the council, but just particularly with older people there, and just it's very dangerous just crossing that bridge. In just general, and it's been touched on a couple of times around the excavations on carriageways and why that might be holding up footpaths, but also why it's leaving the roads in a bad situation. We're all used to seeing that through the years, just seeing, you know, basically how they're patched up. Are there any moves or any policy looking at future-proofing with ducting, access, you know, with access chambers or inspection chambers, that these trenches aren't having to be dug up the roads, you know, horizontal drilling? Why does the road surface have to be dug? It doesn't happen so much, just as a previous resident in Belfast, it doesn't happen so much, I wouldn't say, there. I just wanted to thank you again, just particularly around the Brownhill Link Road crossing. It's great to see that, and I did mention it just in the recent DA meeting. It's great. I was there a few weeks ago, actually, seeing a busload of children coming off the school bus and using it, and that was the reason I'd raised it in the first place, when I seen children running across the road there, so I'm really delighted. Just the Rosscore Bridge as well, and there was brilliant work done there on the Bailey Bridge. It's like a dance floor. Absolutely fantastic. But there was, I think, at some stage maybe in the past, a feasibility, or there was supposed to have been a feasibility looking at the replacement of that bridge, and there is potentially funding available from outside the department that may qualify for. I wonder, do you know anything about that, David, or is there any update on that? And I just really wanted just to also commend Johnny Graham, who looked after the works on the Bailey Bridge, because he was really fantastic in keeping me updated and communicating throughout it, and I really, really appreciate that. Final point, just on the adoptions, and it's great to see them on a list, but they have been on the list a long time, and I appreciate, you know, it can be very complicated, but it's just frustrating. There's several there. There's 2 in Balik, 1 in Irvinstown, and 2 more in Irvinstown, arguably 3 in Irvinstown. Is there any relationship, and I don't know if you will have the answer to this, but is there any relationship there between the capacity issues in the water network? We're getting reports from the water service that these places are at capacity. So is there a connection there between why those haven't been adopted? Sinead and Gurmil Magov, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. David?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor. Take your points, very well made for the work. The A32, my hope is that we need 5 million for Cornham Up. And in the scheme of things, it's not a big amount, but it's, as I say, as you said, we've cleared the vegetation and it's growing back again. So, I live in hope that we will get money for that. I think it's, in terms of the capital that is available at the minute for resurfacing, it would be nice if some could be redirected there, but that's a call for our Minister. Loch Shore Road resurfacing, poor ground. There's no cheap solutions to that. I know remember we raised the carriageway down the new road there, down towards the activity centre, and we had to pile that road to stop it because you just can't load it, it just keeps going down. And that was $1.5 million or something, and we just don't have that at the minute, so you're just doing the best you can with what you have, keep nursing it along. The footway, the bridge crossing, the LTSM scheme, I've taken notice of that. I'll bring that back to Harry again as well. Thanks for that. The bridge and the work on the Billy Bridge, that's Ross Corrie you're referring to, isn't it? Yes, we do have to hand an option study, and it isn't to replace the bridge, it's actually to renovate the bridge and go in and repair the reinforcement and gunite it and dress it up, which we can do very, very successfully. We've done one a couple of years ago. Newton Stewart, can't remember the name, Abercorn Bridge. But we have the technology to do it. The problem is it's going to be around about $1 million to $1.5 million to do that. And we are making bids. We bid upwardly up to the centre to see can we get something for that. It'll probably need to be funded across a couple of financial years, but if they can do that, we'll do it. We'll come alongside with them. The relationship between capacity for NAW and the sewers and our adoption. Sometimes, but it's a rare thing. There are some private developments where actually they've got their own independent septic tanks and sewage works, so to speak, and how those are serviced. I think NAW, do they service them? So they can do these to get round the lack of connection to an existing sewer or the lack of capacity in an existing one. But it doesn't come much between us and getting roads adopted. It's generally more for the quality of the sewers within the adoption, within the development, whereby sometimes you have backfalls in them and there's poor ground issues and stuff. So that's mainly the sticking point for us when we're looking to NAW. Future-proofing for chambers and ducts, very good question. They do that in America in some new roads. They have big galleys and chambers, and each different service is allocated a different duct of a different colour. But we're not there yet. And unfortunately, it's just delve before you dig, and they just open the carriageway. And we try and control that through homology. We try and get them to, at least if we build a carriageway or resurface a carriageway, they shouldn't be back there within 1 or 2 years. Doesn't always work. Because sometimes they come back and there's an emergency works and you get caught out. Chairman.
Thank you, David. Happy enough, Councillor Curry? Yeah. Okay, next up is Councillor Anthony Feely. Can you raise your voice, Anthony?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you. And thanks for the update, gentlemen there, and Siobhan has asked two of the questions I was going to ask about Roscoe Bridge and the site's being updated, so thank you for that. I'm coming in on similar to Councillor John McCrory there about the grass cutting, and you're saying about you starting the second cut in August at the grass, but some of our roads hasn't been cut once yet, so I was just wondering, will they soon be cut? Like there's some of them very dangerous, like coming out of the football field in our village there, and a few crossroads and junctions there, so I think that we'd want to try and get them done as soon as possible, like I'm one of the rural councillors, like my colleague Councillor Seamus Green, he's not here tonight, but he was bringing this up too, like we're always kind of being left to last to get anything done as usual, like it's just that there seems to be the grass cutting this year, and I know we're in the middle of a heat wave now, but I'm going to start talking about the roads, the grit and that, and the grit piles, like, and We didn't get them last year, so try and get the grit piles out in October, November of the year. It's no point trying to get them out when the frost is there. And when I'm talking about grit piles, have you seen any problems with tar boiling at the minute in the middle of the good weather? For there's a few of the roads I see tar boiling on them, and I just seen a gritter out there. I was just wondering, do you do that for when the roads the tar is boiling? I had another one or two wee issues there as well. Yes, the Latoon Road. It's a major problem to me, and I did bring this up at the DA meeting. And I'm glad to see there's money set aside for next year too. Serious problems on that road, and I must say thanks for the bit of resurfacing was done on it, and the Glenashave Road, very well done. But it's a pity we couldn't get more done on it. And serious problems of flooding on it and trees on it. Machinery being broken on it and lorries being damaged on it, and all sorts of problems being happening there. So we might try and keep the Latoon Road on the agenda. And the traffic calming, the speed signs outside schools and stuff. I just think that's a major issue. We have to keep on top of that as well, and try and slow the traffic down outside schools. But I'm just wondering about the grit piles. I know I shouldn't be talking about it now, but that's a major issue with us last year. And thanks for the work was done so far.
Thank you. Councillor Feely. David? Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, can do. The grass cutting, you'll be happy to know they're coming down your way now this week. Within the next 10 days or so, they should be down there. I was talking to him this morning, and he's on his way down the Boylan Road. So they're working the way down to Baleek and then across back to Garrison, and that should be then finished the first cut. It's not that you're the last to get done, but you're probably the most rural roads, so we do start, and priority of the is BC's news, and unfortunately there's more U roads down your way and up by Seamus's than there probably is around Enniskillen, so that's the kind of way that you're left like that. The grip piles last year, they were put out and they were used within the first short space of time, and then we were relying on the public to ring in to let us know where they were needed to be replenished. And as soon as we got word of where they were needed, they went back out again and they put them out. So we're planning on getting them out now when the surface dressing's finished and the grass cutting's done, having them there. But again, if it comes another bad winter, we're relying on yourselves to ring in and let us know where they've been used and who's using them, because the vast majority of people don't even know where they are or don't have a spade to spread them. So if you can report them through on one of the PIPs, we know where they are and we can get somebody out to them. The tar boiling, we have had a number of calls in, and again, I would ask you if you see a road that's boiling, there's a limited number of us at the moment, so let us know and we can get the staff directed out to it. I suppose they're using the gritters so as we can get the salt down early for the winter. So, and the Latoon Road as well, as I suppose we've chatted to most of you out there about it. The water's coming down off the mountain, it's running down the road. We're taking it in sections, we've walked it. The hedges need cut on it, we've wrote to all the farmers. We're doing surfacing on it and trying to improve the drainage when we can. We can't stop it coming off it, so it's a matter now of taking it onto the road and dealing with it as best we can and getting it directed down near the stream and on down into the lake. And as you see, we're out there and we have planned on doing more on it. There's more hedge cutting to be done as soon as the boards disappear off again, and we'll be there most of the winter because that's used as one of our main diversion routes as well whenever we close some of the roads out there. So.
Okay, thank you, Brian. All right, Councillor Feely. Next up is the Vice Chair of the Council, Councillor Chris McCaffrey.
Gormaga to Caherly, and thank you to David and Brian for the report and for all of the work that's been carried out in Erne West this year, and I know it has been substantial. I do want to thank Brian in particular because I've probably wrecking your head the last couple of weeks. I've been ringing you nearly every day, but it's great to see the A509 project started, and today was the first day of the full road closure, so it's great to see the work happening. I suppose inevitably there will be problems now over the next couple of weeks. I've been contacted by a few constituents on it, and it mightn't be directly under DFI control, it may be more of the contractors' issues, but just around lack of signage on both the Derry Lynn side of the closure and Benelec side of the closure. Cars are obviously being diverted off the main road and they're now going on some of the back roads. I think there's big problems there at Arnie, from what a constituent's telling me, going over the Arnie Bridge, articulated lorries and HGVs and that type of thing. Obviously, that bridge is very, very narrow, and possibly not able to withstand that amount of traffic pressure. So, would just be maybe something to look into, and in around the diversion signage as well, just to see if that could be looked at. But no, it is great to see. I know work was carried out at the Belturbet section of it, and obviously Derry Howley and Derry Allen, and I know there's plans for the rest of the A509 as well. So I'm delighted to hear that. In Derrylin Village itself, the new road crossing, which will be delivered in this financial year, that's a very positive thing. I would have some concerns there around Chapel Cross, just beside where the centre and you come out of the chapel. There's a housing development which will be taking place in the next couple of months, and it's going to add a lot of pressure onto that main road. You already have a very busy junction there, and traffic would go quite fast there as well. So I'm just wondering if perhaps some kind of traffic calming measure could be looked at for Chapel Cross, just at the centre. But then there's a couple of issues in Canolly, but I've been speaking to Brian about those already, and really, there's great work done at the Marble Arch Road. That junction is a fantastic job. We're looking forward to the St Aidan's speed, 20-mile-an-hour speed limit being put in place. I know it's not just fully operational at the minute, but any time scale when that might be delivered, and that's really it. Everything else, was work done on the Mullinini Road and Doon Road, which was positive, and so we've been happy. But just maybe the time frame, the issue at the A509, and maybe just that time frame for St Aidan's. David, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. David?
Derry Howlett, A509, you mentioned that time frame for that. I hope they're on the ground at the minute. They are. Good. Excellent. Time frame, I think they're talking about 4 to 5 months for that. But I can get back to that. But like you, I'm delighted that it started we've heard a lot about Derry Howlett, and I'm probably to blame for the thing, because I said at the start, we don't have the money, let's start and do something, and the money will come. But that's why it took 3 or 4 years. You mentioned there St Aidan's, the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. If they've started the work, it should be finished fairly soon. I do know there is an issue in terms of getting the signage and the supply chain for the signage, but I think we're fairly well on top of that now, so we are. Any other things I haven't covered there for you? New development there on Derry Lynn. It's something we can look at in terms of, I think you're getting towards more traffic calming there, and I can ask Harry Gallagher to look at that.
Yeah, no, that's great, David. Thank you. And just again, thanks to you both, and especially to Brian, because I know there was one out of hours call there recently, and he really is a successful story in it. So, no, happy enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Thank you, David. Next up, we have Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. And a lot of the things I was going to bring up have been already mentioned, but I'm thankful, David, for the update in relation to the Cornamuck scheme. That's, we're very keen to get that moving. In terms of the grass verges, Brian, I know you've mentioned that, but I do think it's really important that they are sight lines for people coming out of junctions. I mean, I came across 2 roads this evening, the Lack Road and then coming from the Long Hill Road onto the Ervinstown Road, and the sight lines are terrible, and it's hard enough to get out in the first place. I do think special attention needs to be made, particularly for those type of junctions where visibility can be poor enough. In terms of the bubbling up of tar that Councillor Feely mentioned, I witnessed it myself last week on the Omagh Road between Drumquin and Omagh, where Fibrous were actually laying cables, which is fantastic for the broadband. We're welcoming that. But because they had shut off one side of the road to allow the traffic to single file traffic, it intensified, obviously, the volume of traffic on the surface, and it was terrible. I mean, that's something the contractor surely should have been contacting yourselves to let you know, because that's going to keep happening. So I think that questions should be asked of them to make sure that if they see that happening, they should be reporting that to you and not waiting for a member of the public or ourselves. They're on site, they can see it. It was terrible. I welcome the 20-mile speed limit there that was brought in there at Gilly School, which is great. And also, what's the other thing I was going to mention? Yeah, the street lighting schemes, I think that's great. There's ones there for Dromore and Drumquin, so thanks very much for the update on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly. David? Brian, do you want to pick up on the grass cutting there? Brian?
Thanks. I know actually the roads that you're talking about, and I have seen them, and it is growing, but I can remember the day they were cut, there was nothing on them, and then, as every farmer's dream, the grass just exploded. It grew back to where it was before we even got 20 mile down the road, so they are, as I say, they have a man out doing the sidelines and the important ones, and then they're going to get back around again early August and get it all cut again, concentrating on the A's, B's and C's.
Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to come back on that. In relation to the way that was cut at that time, it was a very narrow strip, so I think if those important junctions, if it can be wider just at some part of it, just to make sure that the sight lines are good enough for people pulling out onto the main road.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I've actually met with them out, and they now know that all the squads came in and they've seen the specification that they were working to. It was new to them as well, so they know where they have to go back to, the different points, the distance down the roads that they have to cut, so the next time it'll look hopefully a lot better.
Thank you, Brian. Next up is Councillor Barry McElduff.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Again, to thank David, Michelle and Brian, and Sean Hackett as well, of course, another member of your team who we prevail upon to respond to our requests, certainly in the Omagh area. So thank you to everybody involved. Again, we would like to support you in battling for a better baseline budget, and would also want to recognise your efforts during the pandemic. What I'd like to concentrate on is, in praise, is page 52 and page 53, pedestrian measures and controlled crossings variously. There's a number of them there that are very important to the constituents who have lobbied me variously, including Farm Hill Road, Brookmount Road, and good to see those puffin crossings being put in at Strathroy Road, even though that was a developing and changing situation, and also Old Mountfield Road. And the cycle measure at O'Kane Park, much talked about within neighbourhood renewal, for quite some time, linking Sperrin area up to the Dromore Road, so that's fantastic. So moving to my question would be taking David back to page 33, and the resurfacing programme in Omagh East, Fermanagh and Omagh East, is currently under review owing to the lack of an asphalt resurfacing measured term contractor. I mean, that's massive. That's massive, and David acknowledged that there are, kind of innovative or interim attempts being made by himself and his colleagues to address that problem. Can I be assured, and can we be assured, that there will be contracts in place come September, October for that area for necessary resurfacing work as it develops over the autumn and winter, and that area won't be left abandoned? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McElduff. David.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, you hit the nail on the head. No asphalt resurfacing contractor in the Omagh area. We are without an asphalt resurfacing contractor. We have one in the Fermanagh area, and you'll feed that man with work. And if we can corral additional capital, we will do that. But unfortunately, it's Omagh in a very precarious position. Our procurement people, our centre procurement expertise people in Belfast, they're confident that they can get measure term contractors in place again in January. But you know that that's just going to give us 3 months to spend. So if we do manage to get these in place, that will be all hands to the pump and works orders to spend the money. As I said before, the other thing we are doing is looking at in each of the council areas that are affected, trying to get a couple of schemes put together to go out to open tender. Cookstown Road, we're looking at one there. There's other places we're looking at different ones. The other one comes to mind is the Moneymore dual carriageway, where you can get about £1 million to £1.5 million spent on a road and resurfacing and keep that finance in the west and add value to our roads. But in terms of the difficulties we're facing in terms of procurement, there can be no guarantees or assurances because we just don't know what other challenge may be around the corner. What the strategy we're trying to do now is to de-risk the thing. We used to have these, what they call the super contracts, where there were a small amount of big resurfacing contracts. What our intention to do now is go to 24 smaller contracts and share the work out a piece more, so that we can try and get contracts to say, okay, and they won't be for 3 + 1 + 1, maybe it's 5 years. There'll be a 1 year plus 1 year, so that there's always rotation of the work, and that the industry has always got a competition going on at any one time, where they can always be bidding for more work. And that's our intention, to try and do that, and I hope that it will work.
Okay, Chair, just to say, and I know you support me 100% in this, this is a crisis affecting the Omagh area, and we want assurances, should it go to ministerial level, as it has and will, that we want a budget in place September, October, November, December to deal with necessary surface defects that arise in the Omagh area, and that it's unimaginable that that wouldn't be the case. But just to say that in that way, to reflect our urgency, and to thank you for your support, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McAduff, and thank you, David. And indeed, it has been raised at DA meetings, David, as well as in the council itself. And it's a vitally important, a very, very serious issue. And obviously, we'll have to get a resolution to it. But anyway, we'll move on for now. And I call upon Councillor Padraig Kelly.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks very much, David, and your team. I want to start off by thanking you for the work on the Drumney-Kelly Road recently. My friend lives on it, and he calls it the new M1, so we'll take the praise for that. I acknowledge it's not perfect towards the Drumney-Kelly Bridge end of it. I'm not sure if you're very familiar with that. And also welcome the recent traffic calming in Greencastle and the resurfacing of the upper Lochmacrory Road towards the Cregan end and the Reculpa Road. I note that Gorchin isn't on the traffic calming measures for 21-22, and I was looking to know, is there an update on this? And would also like to note discontentment, I suppose, about Innislin Road in Mountfield not getting resurfaced. I appreciate the report though. Welcome the pedestrian route in Mountfield Village, the resurfacing of the Hawthorne Road and the Rush Hill Road to come. Another question, I suppose, will the procurement of some larger resurfacing delay potential work that is scheduled, or will that all be on time?
Thank you. Councillor Kelly. David.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor. The Gorchin Road traffic calming, or Gorchin traffic calming, I'm not aware of that scheme. I would have to go away and come back to you on that, so I'll take a note on that one and come back to you on that. A question you asked, will the procurement of the larger schemes delay than the other? Well, we're hoping to get in with the procurement of the larger schemes earlier doors than when the measure term contracts come back into. So our intention is to dovetail as it comes together, because we've got the same contracting resource out there, the same number of companies, and our hope is that they will have, if we can get these larger contracts going in the, say, August, September time, well in advance of when we get our measure term contracts up and running in January. So we're hoping that we will have the resource there, and most importantly, the contracts in place to allow us to do this, hit the ground running. Chairman.
Thank you, David. Okay, Councillor Kelly.
Yep, thanks a million.
Okay, next up is Councillor Eamon Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, David, as well. I have three issues. The first one is the Dernawilt Junction, page 54, and I'm happy to see that it's progressed till the planning stage, but it's dependent on funding. I'm just wondering how much funding is required for it, and how confident are you that you will get it soon, as it is a risk with school children crossing the main road. Number two is the upkeep of the footpaths in the housing estates, and I know from the DEA meeting that they are planned to be done in Air East shortly, but there's like a lot of them are very, very bad with moss, grass, and I'm just wondering how often do you do them, and do you think it's regular enough? Because I know in Carrashee there about 6 months ago there was a an elderly lady stepped out and broke her leg. So, number 3 is just from, I think it was Donal raised the issue of the street lighting. I wasn't aware of that. That you have a new policy of not providing it at the back, both the back and the front. I'd be sort of concerned with that because in my own DA, Thrasnaway, has been a lot of antisocial behaviour. There's been 2 stabbings recently, and even 2 weeks ago, another assault, which wasn't good. So I think the safety, people, for safety, I think it's paramount that we do have light in the front and back. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keenan. David.
Thank you, Chairman. The funding for the schemes on page 54, in terms of how much, I don't have that level of detail, but I can ask our people to talk to you on that. If I could just ask again, which particular scheme did you ask for? I couldn't pick that up.
The Dernawilt Junction, page 54.
Okay, Dernawilt, okay. Nice. If you can also include that, Councillor, in your request, just so we can come back to you on that.
Sorry.
Street lighting to rear alleyways, it's, again, the point well made. Residents don't like it because they've enjoyed it over so many years. That's unfortunately our policy, and we have to try and stick to it. Footways, housing estates, are we happy that we get to scuffle them and clean them as often as possible? The short answer is probably no, but it's down to resource and just to try and eke it out as far as possible to keep them in some sort of shape or form. Would you like to add anything to that, Brian?
We have a programme of weed spraying, and it's ongoing at the moment out around a lot of those areas, so that's going to deal with the grass and anything else. We've also asked the inspectors to programme the worst of them come September, October time, whenever the growth's finished, before the rain and everything else comes on, and we're hoping to get around to them, resource and permitting, to get them cleaned off and leave them a bit more presentable.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next up is Councillor Diana Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, David and team, for your report. I mean, it illustrates the complexities of your job and the budget constraints. First of all, thank you also for the work on the A32 at Drumharvey and Castle Irvine. I think many of us have travelled that road now and see a huge improvement, and that's been really, really well welcomed, particularly by residents in our north and others who travel, further afield. Just taking it back to the very first, the initial speaker, Councillor Thornton, could I just second his proposal on the workshop, his proposal there on the workshop on grass cutting? I'm happy to second.
Sorry, we'll just, sorry about that, Councillor Armstrong. We'll take you as a seconder. Everyone agreed? We'll move on that one, okay? Thank you for that, for the reminder.
Thank you. My question really is, well, I have a lot, as all other councillors do, a lot of issues to do with traffic calming in small rural villages, and added to that is the access across roads, and we did raise this at the DAA, particularly in Kesh, where much as the hedgerows grow, families grow, and parents have a toddler and a stroller or a pushchair to cross a road with. And in Kesh in particular, the community centre, the playing field, to get to that from the Crevenish Road, there are no safe crossing points there, and again going out to the north from Anna Valley Park. Those are issues. I'm just really interested to know, David, what is your policy on the provision of pedestrian crossings? Is it a lobby that comes from councillors, from the people in the villages, or is that something that you determine yourself by just surveying conditions and surveying, or is it determined on road accidents? And one other question, just wanted to welcome the Puffin crossing, as Siobhan said, Councillor Curry. That has been really welcomed within Irvinstown too, although I have seen traffic still travelling quite fast along that stretch, even though with the 30-mile-an-hour zone very clearly marked there, or I'm not sure if it's 20 or 30. The one last thing is coming into Irvinstown, line painting are the roads. The road is not well marked at the curve from just before the 40-mile-an-hour zone. The cars have been seen going across the road there. I just wondered about your road line painting schedule. If you could give us some more details on that, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Armstrong. David?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor. good question about our traffic calming, or in terms of the provision of crossing points. But probably we're more reactive. What we can provide them when we're doing it in conjunction with another more significant piece of work. So the message is, if you bring it to our attention, we'll make an assessment on it in terms of do the counts, do the procedures to stack up to see can we provide these things. In terms of the line painting schedule in Irvinstown, Brian, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, we've issued out to the contractor the white lining to start off to doing all the stops, giveaways, and all the other important road markings out around the district, and they're working through it. Whenever they get that finished, they're coming in to do the roundabouts and the white lines and the long stretches on the main roads as well to bring that up. I know the one you're talking about in Irvinstown, the traffic's been pushed more onto that, so it's probably taking more abuse than most of them, and that they're moving out around the park yards at the church, the credit union, the flower shop. So the wheels of the lorries, they're braking on it, they're wearing it away more quicker than most of the other ones out around the area. And that is on the programme that's issued out to the contractor at the moment to be renewed. That and the lines up through the middle of the town and the pedestrian crossing as well. So.
Okay. Happy enough? Okay, next up is Councillor Thomas O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, David and Brian and Michelle, for the report and the work that has been highlighted to us. I suppose I want to particularly thank the resurfacing work on the High Street in Newton Butler, a small village. These small villages are dying on their feet and struggling big time, so anything that can be done to enhance them and to maintain the appearance of them really does help. So the likes of Lisnaskea, that the road needs some work on going in from the Newton side, certainly would be appreciated as soon as a closure can be agreed on that. The other issue, I suppose, that I wanted to highlight, and following on from Barry, very, very important that the contracts are put in place, the contractors as well put in place to be able to spend the money that we have been allocated in the Western area. But I think, you know, it's very, very important that we don't lose it from the Western area, and that you have plan B and C to be able to make sure that by the end of the financial year we're not handing back any money that was underspent. And if the bigger contractors, there is certainly a lot of resurfacing that can be done in the smaller roads, and I would appeal that that would be looked at as a plan C even. The other issue that I wanted to highlight was that for years I've been complaining about the guys who go out to open the little tracks off the road to let the water away with the spade and shovel, and they turn just one sod over. Along comes the grass cutting machine and it's back into the place in no time at all. Now, we had the experience of the guy on the big tractor with the auger over the winter time who came and cut them at a 45 degrees angle to the road, and the water just sailed on by, not noticing them at all, not to mention the mess and the filling in of the drains that were inside of the road. And Brian's team, he did dispatch a guy to come out, and we tried to deal with it. It was a mess. So I'm just hoping that there is something done to mitigate against the same reoccurrence coming for the winter time. It desperately needs done, that sort of work, but it has to be a better way than is being done. And that also just on the draining, the cleaning of drains as well seems to be a bit of a nightmare year on year as to how it can be done. And the last issue, Chair, that I want to raise is and I know Brian and all of the team argue strongly for more money for the Western area. But I suppose the point that I keep making is that when you put a road in a lot of these other divisional areas, they stay put. When you put a road down particularly in Fermanagh and parts of Tyrone, they move and move considerably. And even with tiling them, it really doesn't make a difference. They have to come back and do the work again and again. So the point I'm making here, Chair, is that even though we hear continuously that we're allocated our share doesn't really equate to the same spend power as there is in other areas. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor O'Reilly. David?
Brian, you want to pick up there on the vandals?
Yeah, the open drains, we've started now to concentrate on cleaning the open drains and open channels using mini diggers rather than manual labour. Last year we done 22 kilometres of open drains and channels as part of our drainage work within the whole of the area. As my thinking is, if I can get the water off the road, there'll be less potholes on it, and to do them with the machine you're going to get a better shaped job. It's there, and I suppose we spoke before, we want to concentrate on the ones that are closing in and blocking and giving us bother are going to be piped, and try and bring the water then into them and on down. A lot of the outlets are now cut to these machines. The fellas have been away on their training courses, and they know now how to use them and get the water off them. 45 degrees isn't always going to work, but sometimes when you have a massive downpour of rain as well, it just can't cope with it. So, but the plan for this winter again is to try and do another 20 kilometres at least of open drains with a machine and keep working around the district and get the water off the road, and hopefully that'll lead to less potholes and less puddles.
Okay.
Yeah, Chairman, no, just the argument of the allocation of the funding from north, south, east and west, and whether the west gets a fair shake of the money. From where I sit, and I would be sort of known to be greedy, I think when it comes to maintenance we actually do fairly well. But I do accept the point that in Fermanagh and certain areas in Tyrone there, you've got a poorer ground conditions, and it does take a bigger whack to keep it up, because it's continuous, you're always going back on it, so there has to be an account made for that. In terms of your asphalt resurfacing contracts and the desire, which is mine as well, not to lose any money from the west, we're doing what we can, but to be honest, I think we will lose money from the west this year from what was initially available. I think we shall lose something. It's just a big ask to get, because we're losing 5 or 6 months in the summer to get to a measure term contract in January, February, March. So there's all that block of work could have been going out in works orders that we're currently not getting out because we're going to a new procurement. But we will do what we can. The one good thing is that we've got an increase, 50% increase on our rural roads funding, and we're pretty confident we're going to spend on that through our small scale responsive contractors. So we're reasonably happy that we'll do that this year.
Thanks, Chair. Absolutely disappointed, as you can imagine, to hear that there is that potential at all. And surely when we are sitting in the middle of July, there is an opportunity to maybe try to, and I certainly would want to explore every avenue, as you will, no doubt, to ensure that the money is spent proportionally in the Omagh area for what it was, I'm sure, badly needed there as well. But overall, is there no way to be able to look at our existing contractors and try to allocate some more work out around the western area? Is a big area and we have a lot of contractors.
Chairman, we are fairly tied in terms of how and what we can do with the various contractors. You know, your minor improvement works, well, we can't really be putting out wholesale asphalt resurfacing to a minor improvement works contractor because they're there to reconstruct roads, not for overlay. The asphalt resurfacing measure term contracts, what we're now lost and we haven't got. We've lost 3 out of 4 in Western. That's not there, but that's where that resurfacing work should go to. Then we go to your small scale responsive contract. The maximum work order there is 15,000, so there is a series of small overlays. It's not the big stuff that we really want to get done to build life onto carriageways. So we're fairly hog-tied in that regard, but that's not to say we won't look to try and do it in other ways, which we are doing.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Okay, bear with me, please. We have another 4 councillors who want to speak here. So next up is Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start by giving my thanks for the traffic calming in the Greencastle area. Obviously, it was an issue that was highly concerning to the parents and families around there, And I suppose after a long time of asking, it's great to see that being done, and it's, the reports coming back are absolutely outstanding. So great job, well done there. And I note even on page 51 of the report, there's further improvements around the school crossing there still planned. So hopefully we'll see more of that in the coming year. In relation to page 13 and the issues around resurfacing and the type and the depth of surface or material used, I've had a lot of questions raised with me about the Omagh Cookstown road and how defects seem to appear in that with kind of alarming regularity, and no matter how many times it's patched up, there seems to be new holes, and you could nearly predict in what area and what stretch of the road they're going to be. Similarly, the Creggan Road from Creggan to Carrickmore is another one. I know there has been a bit of work done, but again, when it's done in patches, it's not really ideal or conducive to a good experience as a driver. In relation to page 36 of the report, one of the areas that is down for resurfacing in the coming year is the Mulleydoo Road, and I would like to again put on record there's a huge hump in the middle of that road that is caused due to it being used as a diversion a number of years ago when there was a flood at Formal, and at the time it was stressed that there was a short-term measure and that would be looked at. So I'm hopeful that when the road is being resurfaced, that will also be redressed. And the final issue I have just is in relation to a query I'd sent in, and I'd got a response to it just late on Friday there, in relation to a vehicle restraint system on the Crockenboy Road at the junction with the Black Bog Road. Now the response I've got, I suppose it's not the first time I've received this kind of response, but the request has been denied because the location doesn't score high enough to warrant the installation of the system, and it goes on to more or less say that because there hasn't been any reported or a high enough reported number of collisions or accidents in that, even though I think the information is only up until 2019, that's really the reason given. And I suppose other councillors will be aware of this too, and I'm not going to tell any how to suck eggs at this stage, as are well aware of it too. The fact that I suppose can be used as an excuse that there hasn't been an accident or there hasn't been a fatality at a particular area.
10 seconds there, councillor.
Is used as an excuse not to do something. Surely prevention is better than cure. So I know this is probably policy from DFA, but how do we go about changing that, because it's completely unacceptable, nonsensical. Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Councillor. David.
Thank you, Chairman. Take your comments about the reoccurrence of, and it's not just Omagh Cookstown Road, there's a lot of different roads with the reoccurrence of defects, and that's where our actual resurfacing comes in terms of patching and then overlaying. So then you stitch it and then you overlay it and you seal it. And unfortunately this year we're short on asphalt resurfacing contracts for this period anyway into the autumn. Creggan Road patching, it's just a product of the funding we have to hand, and to make it go as far as we can. It's not the way to do it. It's just what we have, and that's the way we have to do it. The Mulleydoo Road, in terms of there's a hump on the road, I'll mention that to Sean to see what he thinks about that. I just don't know the detail of it at all. And in terms of the need for improvements in the Crockenboy Road, the Black Boy Road, I think you said, unfortunately, it's a strange one. We have some bends in roads that we just don't have accidents at, but they're very bad. And sometimes they're that bad they're safe, if you know what I mean. So we do actually rely, if we're going to do an improvement, we do rely on an accident history to try and justify the expenditure to realign the road or whatever. And that's just the system we employ. We need to, if somebody says, why did you do that? What is the accident history there? Well, there is none. And I take your point. Well, are you going to wait till there is one? But sometimes there just aren't some, and some bends for some reason they just don't attract accidents. And I don't understand it, but that's the way it is.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor McGuire.
Just very briefly on that, I think if there's a query or something being brought to you in relation to a bend, whether there's a history of an accident or not, speaking personally anyway, I wouldn't be one to bring unnecessary work to someone. If it's an issue, I would bring it. And again, you understand my point. It doesn't make logical sense to me. So, no, that's grand. Thanks anyway for the answer.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Councillor Deborah Erskine.
Thank you, Chair. I joked with Brian at the start that I wasn't going to bring up anything because my laptop has died a death here, but I couldn't resist coming in. But I just want to thank David, the team, everybody involved for all the work that they do on a daily basis. It's much appreciated, and I appreciate the report that's come forward. My main concern is the contracts and the asphalt, the legal challenges that are taking place. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I'm just wondering how affected this particular area is in terms of, can you give any ballpark figure in terms of how many projects this will affect? And will this have a knock-on impact then? Will there be a backlog on the projects that will be involved then further down the line, even 2022, 2023? And you said there, hopefully I've picked this up right, that October 2021 is when you hope to have contracts in place, and then there's a 3-month time scale to spend money. In layman terms, does that mean we must be lobbying to ensure that maybe there's an extension to the funding and to the timelines in terms of when this money can be spent for projects? Because as we know, and you've said, you know, the Omagh area is affected the most, but here in Fermanagh and Omagh, the roads just don't stop at Fermanagh, and this could have an impact upon all of our constituents, regardless whether it's Fermanagh or Omagh that they live in. So if you could just, if you can, answer those few points for me, please.
Thank you. Councillor Erskine. David?
Chairman, good questions. Actually, by the way, to set this out, actually, there's 4 asphalt resurfacing contracts that we don't have access to. 3 of them, Slough that have it, are in Western Division. The 4th one is in Southern Division. To put it in context, each of those contracts each year, we'll be seeking to spend around about 8 million in each of those. So, worst case scenario, if we don't get anything done here, we're losing 24 million to 30 million. Let's talk horrible numbers here. So that's where we're trying to do everything we can to get out bundles, 1.5 to 2 million a piece, to get those out, and then to get the other ones kick-started in January, February, March. So it's not a good picture. There's no other way to put this. The question you asked, should we lobby? I can't tell you to lobby. I can't tell you that. But it would break my heart if we lost that money to the division.
Chair, I think we should lobby, and I think we should write to the Minister as a matter of urgency. 24 to 30 million is not a good place to be in if these guys are going to lose that money. So I would propose that we do write a letter to the Minister in the strongest possible terms that this area cannot afford to lose that money, and our roads are in a dire state. This is a rural area, and we need to ensure that we're keeping that money. And I would also propose that if there needs to be an extension to those contracts and funding.
Okay, Councillor Erskine. Just carry on.
I would also ask that if there needs to be an extension to that we also ask the Minister for that also. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Chair. We've heard 2 proposals there. Seconder, Councillor Kathleen Kelly.
Yep, seconded.
Can I come in, Chair, just?
Very quickly, Councillor Coyle.
Yeah, concur with Deborah, but I think we should send CC the Minister of Finance in, because it's the Department of Finance that sets the rules for the budgets. So he needs to be, if we are going to ask for an extension into the next financial year, it is his responsibility. And I don't know why the other members is laughing, because it's the truth.
Sorry,
look, I think that we should be respectful in this debate. There is people, our constituents are suffering as a result of this, and we need to ensure, no matter who it is, that we do right, and ensure that everybody is under no illusion that we do not want to lose this money from this district. So I'm happy enough to include the Finance Minister.
Okay, you've heard it proposed, and I take it you're happy enough to second that, Councillor Catherine Kelly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All agreed? Okay. Happy enough? Do you want to come back? Are you okay? You're happy enough now, Councillor Erskine? You all right? Okay, thank you for that. Moving on very swiftly. Not you yet. Councillor Robert Irvine.
It was a lottery, Chairman, to see which one was left.
Sorry.
If there's a proposal needed to extend the meeting because we're about to run out of time, I'll make that proposal.
23 minutes past, I'm told by the Chief Executive.
Well, it's 15 minutes past here, so it might finish. One, welcome to see on page 51 the work that you're going to do at Castlecood Road to do a right turn onto the Temple Road. It's much needed, particularly with the improvement at the Inniskill Model School that's just been completed. Three things, and I don't want you to answer them now, I want you to come back on them. Two of them are drainage related, and they kick back to what Councillor already talked about. On the B140 Loch Eyes Road, you're going to surface dress it, the complete length of it, I think it's 5.5 kilometres, no problem. There has been habitual surface or standing water on that in heavy rain, and it's not runoff, it's actually standing water. From Loch Eyes practically towards its exit onto the main Inniskill and Temple Road, and it pools about every 60-80 metres. Some of them in the worst rain actually cover half the carriageway on bends, so it's actually a problem. It's a traffic hazard, and you'll only see it when it rains. So I would like you to go out and have a look at that, because your surface dressing is really going to be negated by when the rains come back. Secondly, another one that I've talked to your colleagues for the past 4 years, and you said you were going to do something. On the Clockcore Road, about 300 metres back up from its junction with the Gola Road, there is a double bend, and an underground stream seems to cross under the road from one side to the other, but it actually bubbles up and it cuts into the road surface. You've continually repaired the potholes, but they still keep appearing. I've had section engineers out and they said there is a spring underneath and you're proposed to do something, but I'm still waiting, and so are the residents in that area. And the last one is the Killyray Road, going out of Tamla to its connection with the Ballylucas Road. You've carried out improvements on that, and that's really surface dressing as well as structural overlay to increase the width, because that's a rat run for people who want to go from the Temple Road back to the A4 on the main Belfast Road, vice versa. But about half a mile out of Tamla, for the first series of bends, up until you come to Skip Higher, the road is crumbling away on either side. So when people are trying to pass, they're actually going in and we're getting numerous punctures. So maybe you would have a look. You've done a bit of work on it, but you haven't actually come around the bad bend and gone past the entrance to Lord Anthony Hamilton's. So you don't have to come back to me on those. If you come back to me at some stage, you don't have to answer now. Thanks very much, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Irvine, you're happy enough to come back, David and Brian? Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bernice Swift.
Guramagat, Cahirlock, and just like to thank the team for the strategic report that I read this weekend when the roads were bubbling out in other townlands, and certainly not mine. But I'll tell you what has been bubbling tonight. My blood has been boiling at a temperature higher than the Tar this weekend. And it's for the simple reason that, quite evident with all of the councillors who spoke rurally, the very fact, and you gentlemen have outlined it, the lack of significant investing coming towards us for our rural roads. This, in my opinion, is a complete democratic deficit, and as councillors have said, it's just not the responsibility of one minister, but it is the responsibility of one department. But everybody has a role to play. And I want to make the call here tonight, and the proposal, as Brian had reminded me about, those of us who live on not even the A or B or C class roads, the completely forgotten and bypassed roads, we pay the same rates. We are treated equally in that regard. So, and as Thomas had mentioned, no matter how much bitumen or tar is put on our roads are still moving. And they're moving because they were built in bogs in the first place. What needs to move now is the decimal point on the rates that we are charged for paying the same amount as those who are furnished with the luxury of decent roads to drive on. And I've said it in the past, you know, cars for us aren't a luxury, they're a necessity. But by God, they're getting horrid abuse on the roads that we have to negotiate in the Rural West. And I know well your team today and your team in the past have always been shovel ready. If you have the money and the investment, you're more than willing to do it, and we all appreciate that very much. So I reiterate the proposal here tonight that the Minister's Department and all those responsible at the Executive Office now really and truly reconsider the rates that we are charged for driving on poor roads. The democratic deficit, it has spoken to us loud and clearly throughout the theme of our meeting here tonight, and it's no longer acceptable. It was never acceptable. So I think we would be remiss not to speak on behalf of all of our constituents and ask that very question to those who are accountable. And let's see what answer they come back with, because it is most certainly our duty to lobby on behalf of all of our citizens and our ratepayers. And I'll just finish on a nice positive note. And for the first time ever, I didn't go bonkers when I was rerouted today from Darragonlead through Darralin through the scenic route around Erne West, because the A509 is being well looked after. And I was visiting the former chairman of Fermanagh Legacy Council at the time, and even 16 years before I have been a councillor, he was asking for the same investment and works to be done. So while today was a school day and we couldn't exactly pop the cork, but we will celebrate when it's all finished. So Gormagat for that. So just to reiterate the proposal, I'm sure a suitable rural councillor will second that. Gormagat, Cahirlock.
Thank you, Councillor Swift. And with that, can I ask for proposal and seconder for an extension to our meeting? Councillor Councillor Deborah Erskine, seconded by Councillor John Coyle. And all agreed? Okay, can we have a seconder now for Councillor Bernice Swift's proposal? Councillor Anthony Feely, seconded. All agreed? Okay. I don't think we have anything for David or Brian to answer there at all. Thank you for that. And last but not least, Councillor John Coyle wanted to come on at the very last.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to David and Brian and all the staff to DFA that has worked through the pandemic and everything. It's been stressful, I know, like for every citizen, but I would like to thank, just to my commitment to the A32 improvement. I would like to see more funding be made available for that and progressed to make it safer. The Enniskillen bypass, I most welcome that as well, and getting it shovel ready. And that the A5, it is a strategic project that needs to be delivered for our council area as well, and I want to do that. I have worked with Harry Galler on the proposal for, I see it's in the study, for the Tempo Main Street. Thank you for taking on my proposal to improve that stretch for the people in Tempo. It is extremely dangerous, and I hope funding and all the procurement or the agreements will be brought forward, and I'll keep in touch with Harry. A number of rural roads in my area, there's culverts collapsing. I don't see, is there any specified funding? And I could ask you if there is. I have a number of them that needs to have attention and might be got in this financial year. Councillor Anthony Feely spoke about grit piles. I know we had a very extreme frosty winter last year, and sometimes we do have mild winters and wet, but grass grows over the grit piles. It's probably not the best, use of public money for that. So I don't know, is there anything that you can do so they're more visible maybe for road users rather than just grass growing over, they may not have a spade with them, or to do that. Most farmers in the rural areas probably do, but it's just not. It's just with the grass growing over them, they're not visible. And then I represent Aaron North, and there is welcome the 20 mile per hour school at schools. And I think that there is a number of schools in Aaron North that would avail of that scheme, and I would like it to be, put it on notice to you that I hope that it would be, maybe 2 schools at the foreseeable to get that. And like Councillor Armstrong, I would ask you to do a study in Kesh Main Street for pedestrian crossing traffic lights, because it is extremely busy, and people do need to cross it. It is a busy thoroughfare, and that's all I have. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coyle. David, do you want to reply to anything there?
Yes, Chairman. You mentioned the collapsing culverts there, Councillor Coyle. 2 different sections within our department would deal with that. If they're over 1.8 metres, if they're over 1.8 metres in the span, they'll fall back to Robin Cuddy. And he has a certain amount of funding there to deal with that. The smaller ones, unfortunately, fall back to Brian to replace through his own labour force and within the O&M.
If you just write in, John, send me in them locations, and then I'll check them.
Yeah, see what we can do in those. Grit piles, making them more visible. I entirely take the point by the time you get through your summer. And by the way, if they're not used, if the moor hits them, they're just obliterated anyway. They're scattered. So you questioned the value maybe of doing it. I wouldn't like to stop doing it. I think I'd get it hard and sore if we did stop to deploy the grit piles. But I just think that the secret is to get them done early doors at the start, into the winter when there is no grit, and they're there. And I think that's as good as we can do. Kesh Main Street pedestrian crossing, take that on board again. We'll bring that back to Harry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Councillor John Coyle, for that. And just before we finish off here, can I just thank the team, David and Michelle and Brian, for coming along here this evening. It was a very worthwhile meeting, I thought. And it's great, to me, it's great to be able to meet in person, although we're still socially distanced, but at least we're here in person, and it's good to be here and to see everyone again. I welcome the work of 2020-21 that has been already carried out, and I look forward to 2021-22 year. There's some disappointing news out there, and we've already elaborated on it, and Councillor McElduff has spoken on it as well, as myself and others. I mean, that's a very serious issue we're having to contemplate, basically. And there's one question I have, or it's not really a question, but it's the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits at schools, and there seems to be an issue at Omagh County Primary. If you can check that one out for us, that would be good. I think it's just not complete there yet. So if you can look into that one, that'd be great. And I'd just like to thank the team, and I'll let DFI Roads team leave us now, if you're happy enough.
Thank you very much, Chair. By the way, we're here to serve. Just keep contacting us. I always tell my staff, please talk to these councillors. They might not always like the message, but we have to talk to you. And if we work together, we might get something done.
And, and everyone's got the form, any other issues, so they're always on email anyway, and we do email them. So thanks again, Michelle. Thank you. Thanks, David. Brian. Okay, moving on. Item 5 is to consider requests from Leitrim County Council for 3 elected members to participate on the SL-NCR Greenway Project Community Liaison Group. Okay, we'll take proposals.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Chair, well,
Alison,
just
2
very
seconds.
briefly, by way of commentary. So this is the Sligo Leitrim Northern Counties Railway Greenway project. As members will be aware from previous reports, Leitrim is the lead council. We are progressing now with the procurement of a design team, and the intention is that the community liaison group would meet on a quarterly basis, but reports would come back through each of the respective council committees. So they're keen, obviously, to get the elected member input now, Chair. For this, the liaison group, I don't have a date as yet for the first meeting, but I know they're keen to have council nominations confirmed in July.
Okay, there were a couple of councillors on the kitten to me there, and it's Councillor Paul Robinson first.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to nominate Councillor Deborah Erskine.
Okay, Councillor Paul Robinson, on behalf of the Democratic Unionist Party, is nominating Councillor Deborah Erskine. Next councillor up is Councillor Robert Irvine, as indicated.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Alec Baird.
Okay, on behalf of the Ulster Unionist Party, Councillor Robert Irvine has nominated Councillor Alex Baird. We have Councillor Maguire on behalf of Sinn Féin.
Aye, currently, as the nominating officer for Sinn Féin, I'd like to propose Councillor Anthony Feely.
Okay, Councillor Maguire has nominated Councillor Anthony Feely on behalf of Sinn Féin. And that's our three nominations. And I see we have 2 of our independents at the back. Want to bring something forward? Councillor Swift?
Yeah, Guramagat Cahirlock. Well, it was really to ask, like, 3 members wasn't going to be what I would call very democratic for our super council, given not just our numbers, but indeed the whole new political stratosphere. So, Alison, would you have any idea whatsoever, were there any further discussions about an increase in the number? And of course, you know, I always like to have the balance, you know, the good rural, and we have gender there already addressed, but, you know, and obviously representative from the border region, which would be good as well, even though obviously our rail network is going to impact everyone positively. But just on that, you know, the numbers are rather sparse. I know I'm not talking about bigger is better always, but I think in this instance it would have been good.
Yes, Chair, the original proposal was 2 members from each of the 4 councils, so it has been increased to 3 members, so that is the position. We will be bringing reports through as I say, to the respective council committee meetings. In terms of the process that we would have, we would endeavour to proceed by agreement, and if that's not possible, we would then go to DeHunt for the nomination of the 3 places.
Yeah, if it still could be negotiated for an increase in numbers, it would. I feel strongly that would be better. We just have Ulster Unionist, DUP and Sinn Féin at the moment. Nothing from SDLP, the independents and the smaller parties.
I suppose, Chair, and there have been discussions on this, and Leitrim have considered the makeup. There will also be community reps. There are 4 councils involved, so they do want to keep the numbers manageable. So certainly it will be 3 elected members per council.
Okay, there are a couple other councillors in the kitten there. Do you want to come on? Councillor Donald Coffey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just wondering if the Chief Executive can explain. You addressed an email to us, councillors from Erne West and Enniskillen, as well as the party leaders, and I'm just wondering why you targeted the 2 DEAs in particular. I take it that this is a remit that would include Enniskillen as well as Erne West. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I sent it to the Enniskillen DEAs and to the group leaders with representatives in both Erne West and the Enniskillen DEAs and to independent members in those areas. The reason is because that was the request from Leitrim, that the members in question would represent the DEAs that are on the route. So that could be anywhere. We have 18 kilometres of the affected area, which includes both Erne West and Enniskillen. It's up to the council now to determine its composition as to the members that will go forward.
Okay, Councillor Coffey. Councillor McAleer, did you want to come in?
Yeah, well, it was on points previously raised by Councillors O'Coffey and Councillor Swift, just to get that expanse of representation on there. I think it's very important given the issue, so just to record that, Chair.
Thank you for that. Okay, well, we have 3 nominations currently. That's the 3 nominations. So, go for a show of hands. Are we all agreeing on 3 nominations? Sorry.
Well, you know, it should be pointed out as well that the first 3 with their hands up were taken, and, you know, those with their, you know, is that democratic too?
Yeah, we can take a vote. Okay, we can take a vote on what's happened here.
Chair, just before we proceed, could I ask through yourself, Chair, to the Chief Executive, what would be the position if we played the hunt? Are you aware of that, Chief
Yes.
Okay,
Executive?
thank you for that, Councillor Ware.
Yes, Chair, if we applied to Hunt, we would commence at point number 45 on the schedule. So point 45 is Sinn Féin, point 46 is the SDLP, point 47 is the Ulster Unionist Party. So those would be the 3 places as per to Hunt.
Chair, can I ask, I think it's important that Enniskillen DEA is represented on this, actually. I don't really care who it is, but I think we need to have someone representing the interest of Enniskillen at DEA. Thank you, Chair.
I think we're going to have to go to a vote on this.
Could I propose we go with the recommendations, them 3, and if it goes to a vote, that we can put it to a vote, propose that way?
Yeah. Have a seconder? Councillor Robinson, proposed by Councillor Buchanan, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Okay, can we have a show of hands for the 3 nominations that have been proposed? Get them up. Sorry, Councillor Buchanan.
Can you just confirm the 3 members again there who are going forward there?
The 3 people who have been nominated so far are Councillor Deborah Erskine, Councillor Alex Baird, and Councillor Anthony Feely.
Okay, and was there a stipulation in terms of the DEA where they came from?
Chair, there's no stipulation, but Leitrim County Council have suggested that the representatives would represent the DEAs in question or the municipal district areas in relation to those councils in the Republic.
Okay. Okay, well, just take that vote again. A show of hands, please, for the 3 nominations. Hold them up. Okay, against? Okay, the vote was 18 for and 5 against. Therefore, the vote is carried, and the 3 nominees are Councillor Erskine, Councillor Baird, and Councillor Feely. Thank you.
And do we have any indication when the rail network's going to be built?
That's for another day, Councillor Swift. Okay, moving on swiftly. Bear with us. Item 6 is correspondence. No correspondence. And item 7 is any urgent and relevant business. None has been brought before me. So therefore, at that, at 10:38, the meeting is now brought to a close. Thank you for your attendance.